Chapter 402. Hurry up and thank your master. He Qian suddenly said, snapping everyone out of their daze. Yu was stunned, but she understood her father's intention. She blushed, but without hesitation, she went up to Lin Jin and bowed deeply. Lin Jin glanced at He Qian helplessly. When he said he was Yu's teacher, it was just an expedient tactic to deceive Elder Mo. Who knew He Qian would turn his act into reality? Speaking of which, Yu was quite talented. With a blood pact with the White Jade Dragon, her future would be limitless. Moreover, he couldn't take back his words. Hence, Lin Jin accepted Yu's gift, taking it as a tacit acknowledgement. Seeing that Lin Jin didn't stop her, He Qian was overjoyed. He wasn't blind either. That White Jade Dragon's talent and potential were even stronger than his rank 4 Jade Dragon. Although it was harder to form a blood pact with a better pet beast, with Lin Jin around, it shouldn't be a problem. Unknowingly, Lin Jin had become an omnipotent existence in He Qian's eyes. Suddenly, a dragon's roar resounded. It was the red and black dragon that had mustered its courage and charged into the flames. It didn't die. Not only did it not die, but it also benefited greatly. It hadn't been in the flames for a long time. Although it hadn't truly been reborn, the benefits it received were considerable. The layer of black jade skin on its body was already hard and cracked. With a shake of its body, the black skin fell off, revealing a scarlet jade skin. The Crimson Jade Dragon. This crimson jade looked like it was dyed in blood, a beautiful sight to behold. In addition, this dragon had an odd appearance. It looked more like a lizard with large forelimbs and a thick tail. Adept at crawling, it clearly relied on strength. You sure know how to seize opportunities. You're much stronger than your peers. Lin Jin quite liked this Crimson Jade Dragon's personality. Go for it whenever you see an opportunity. Even if you weren't confident, you'd still give it a try. The benefits this Crimson Jade Dragon received were only second to the White Jade Dragon. Its future achievements wouldn't be too shabby either. Your Majesty, we can go now, Lin Jin said to He Qian. The latter nodded, making a mental note of this Crimson Jade Dragon. The next time the royal family wanted a blood pact, he would definitely choose it. The group headed out. The Crimson Jade Dragon let out a deafening roar as if expressing its gratitude to Lin Jin. The other Jade Dragons prostrated themselves on the ground in fear, only Senior Mo remained unaffected. However, Senior Dragon Mo no longer had the time to care about this. Right now, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. The pride of the dragon race was completely shattered at this moment. Seeing that Lin Jin was about to leave, Senior Mo's heart skipped a beat. It finally let go of its unwarranted sense of superiority. Perhaps it was inspired by the Crimson Jade Dragon that dashed out without a care for its own safety when it saw an opportunity. Senior Mo suddenly spoke up. That's right. Appraiser Lin, wait a moment. Everyone was taken aback, but they stopped in their tracks and looked at Senior Mo. At that moment, Jade Mo Dragon crawled out from below. Upon closer inspection, it actually looked very similar to the Crimson Jade Dragon. They were both lizard dragons, but it was slightly larger in size. Appraiser Lin, please wait. I have a favor to ask of you. At that moment, Senior Mo finally understood that the person in front of it was a true expert. Perhaps this was the only chance it would ever meet again in its lifetime, just like the Crimson Jade Dragon and the other Jade Dragon beasts from before. If it could seize this opportunity, it might be able to be reborn and change its destiny. If it stubbornly held onto its own views or held onto its meaningless pride, it would miss out on this golden opportunity. At this crucial moment, the Crimson Jade Dragon inspired it. Senior Mo decided to let go of everything to pursue this opportunity that was of utmost importance to it. However, sometimes an opportunity wasn't something you could ask for just because you wanted to. Lin Jin shook his head. I don't have the time to listen to your request. Having said that, he strode out. He Qian had been staring at Senior Mo in shock. As the Emperor of Jade Dragon Kingdom, he was a frequent visitor to the Jade Dragon Lair, so he had known Senior Mo for quite some time. To He Qian, Senior Mo was like a rock in the toilet, smelly and stubborn. There was no way it would lower its head. Moreover, He Qian's grandfather and father had told him about this before. Senior Mo was 200 years old, and its bad temper had persisted for the past 2 centuries. Today, the sun had risen from the west. Senior Mo was admitting defeat. It was rare, no, it had never been seen before. It was obvious that Senior Mo was panicking. However, He Qian wouldn't speak up for the dragon. Seeing that Lin Jin was ignoring it, Senior Mo knew that if he missed this opportunity, he would never be able to get it back. Hence, he panicked. "Appraiser Lin, I'm begging you. Besides, I've just lost, so I'm now your servant. Please save me, Appraiser Lin." Senior Mo prostrated on the ground with its head facing down, as if it was a human kneeling in worship. This act of submission was a sign of sincerity. However, Lin Jin didn't change his pace. Without turning back, he said, "I told you, I don't have the time to listen. I've been in the royal capital for quite some time now, so I should head back to Maple City as soon as possible." Having said that, Lin Jin ignored Senior Mo and left. Even if the others wanted to say something, they gave up on that thought after seeing Lin Jin's determination. Who was to blame? Senior Mo was the one who acted all high and mighty, arrogant, and looked down on others. Now that he knew how to lower his head and beg, it was too late. The 2 princes looked at the old dragon with pity, probably thinking that if they were Appraiser Lin, they would have taken this Senior Mo dragon in as a servant. Everything else aside, this old dragon was strong and intimidating. It could hold its own no matter what kind of situation it was in. The few of them exited the Jade Dragon Lair together, leaving Senior Mo kneeling on the ground. Beside him, the Vermilion Dragon seemed to be itching to give it a try. However, the Vermilion Dragon had its own intelligence. Although it did not possess the same cultivation level as Senior Mo, which allowed it to speak the human language after refining its hyoid bone, it was still capable of thinking. Although it wanted to follow that person, it didn't dare to. This was different from when it leaped into the flames like a moth to a flame. Out of respect, it suppressed that urge. "He's really gone." At that moment, Senior Mo crawled up from the ground. There was a look of disappointment in its huge eyes. It didn't want to hide in this dark Jade Dragon Lair, but it had no other choice. Back in the day, it was a prodigy dragon of this Jade Dragon Lair. It had long since refined its supernatural powers and left to explore the outside world. At first, it was a smooth journey, but later on, it met an enemy. Due to a grudge, they became enemies. Senior Mo was no match for its opponent and was severely injured. In the end, it had to flee in a panic. Ever since then, it had never left the lair. Firstly, it didn't dare to leave. Secondly, the Jade Dragon Lair could nourish its body and mind. However, the effects were slow. Even after such a long time, its injuries hadn't healed completely. Every year, it would be tormented by its injuries, causing its temper to become increasingly erratic and violent. Sometimes, it couldn't even control itself, and today was no different. However, Senior Mo wasn't muddle-headed. When it realized that it had met a true expert, it immediately changed its rebellious attitude because it had been inspired by the agate dragon. Whenever an opportunity presented itself, it had to seize it, even if it meant risking its life, even if its bones were crushed. However, it seemed like it was too late. Chapter 403. Senior Mo wanted to heal its wounds and seek vengeance on its former enemy. Unfortunately, the opportunity was fleeting and Senior Mo missed it. Why? Senior Mo roared angrily. His body glowed with a jade-like radiance. Other than the crimson jade dragon that had been tempered by fire, the other dragons immediately retreated in fear. Just then, Senior Mo noticed that the crimson jade dragon was heading deeper underground. There was a turbulent undercurrent in that direction. Through the undercurrent, they could reach another exit and leave the Jade Dragon Lair. Senior Mo used to enter and exit the Jade Dragon Lair from that direction. However, the undercurrent was so dangerous that even a dragon could die if they weren't careful. Not even their corpses could be recovered. Because Senior Mo knew what was lurking there, when he saw the Crimson Jade Dragon heading in that direction, he reacted immediately. "Where are you going?" Senior Mo's massive body pounced forward to block the Crimson Jade Dragon's path. The latter couldn't speak, but it could emit a dragon's roar. It let out a few roars and looked determined. This was draconic language. Naturally, Senior Mo understood what he was trying to say. However, once it did, its eyes widened and it was secretly impressed by the Crimson Jade Dragon. The dragon was risking its life to pass through the undercurrent and leave the Jade Dragon Lair. It was going to Maple City to look for Immortal Lin. This was a direct translation of the Crimson Jade Dragon's words. To the dragon, Lin Jin was a great immortal. However, his words were like a clap of thunder that once again inspired Senior Mo Dragon. Moreover, Senior Mo was no fool. It pondered for a moment, and its dull eyes lit up once more. That's right. Why didn't I think of something that even the Crimson Jade Dragon could think of? Senior Mo's veins were twitching. The reason why the Crimson Jade Dragon was willing to risk its life to pass through the undercurrent was because it was the only way for dragons without blood contracts to leave the Jade Dragon Lair. Only after forming a blood contract, like the White Jade Dragon, could they leave through that entrance. This was a contract signed between the He family's ancestor and the Jade Dragon deity. Every dragon in the Jade Dragon Lair had to obey it or they would explode and die. Where was the Crimson Jade Dragon going? It said Maple City. Before Appraiser Lin left, he had mentioned that he would be leaving the royal capital and returning to Maple City. It was simple and straightforward, but it was such a simple and direct thing that Senior Mo didn't notice. Come to think of it, Appraiser Lin had said that he didn't have time to listen. It wasn't that he didn't want to listen, nor was it a rejection. Hence, when he said that he wanted to return to Maple City, it became a hint. How could I be so stupid? Jade Mo Old Dragon roared madly. It was cursing itself, yet it was cursing so happily and excitedly. That was because it discovered that the opportunity had not disappeared. It was just that it had not seen it before. Now that it had seen it, it would definitely not let it go. No matter what price he had to pay, he could not let go of this opportunity. Senior Mo made up his mind almost instantly. But it had another problem. In this Jade Dragon Cave, there had to be a leader to manage the situation. The earliest leader was naturally the Jade Dragon deity. However, the Jade Dragon deity had left the Jade Dragon Lair 200 years ago. At that time, the position of leader had been handed over to him. According to the rules of the Jade Dragon Lair, if it wanted to leave, it had to appoint a new leader. This was a rule that had to be abided by. Dragons were the most faithful to their contracts and rules. Once a rule was set, even if there was no external force to restrain it, they would still abide by it and carry it out. This was something that was engraved in their blood. Now, who in the Jade Dragon Lair could take on the role of leader? Without any hesitation, Senior Mo turned to the Crimson Jade Dragon. Next, it was time for Senior Mo to use its silver tongue to trick the human, no, to trick the dragon. Little Crimson, I plan to hand over the position of leader to you. Don't say anything, listen to me, other than the position of leader. I have a supernatural ability to refine hyoid bones. Do you want to learn it? Once you learn it, you'll be able to speak. I also have a transformation skill that allows you to change your body shape. I can promise you that once I learn the transfiguration skill, I will teach it to you. Still not willing? I'll teach you the cultivation method that I've accumulated over the past 200 years. That should be enough, right? Let me tell you, you have to agree whether you want to or not. With your meager skills, even if you manage to make it through the underground current, You'll still be surrounded by danger once you reach the outside world. You might even die before you find appraiser Lin. Listen to me and cultivate for a few more years. It'll be good for you. After a few hours of coaxing and pestering, Senior Mo finally managed to convince the Crimson Jade Dragon. After some instructions, the dragon was summoned for a leadership handover ceremony. Then, Senior Mo eagerly dived into the underground current. Meanwhile, Lin Jin was indeed planning to return to Maple City. After all, his business in the royal capital had been settled, so there was no point in staying here. There were still a lot of troublesome matters to deal with. The two princes who wanted to curry favor with Lin Jin were disappointed. However, they knew that there would still be opportunities in the future. If they were too impatient, they would only lose more than they gained. He Yu and He Qing were obviously reluctant to see Lin Jin leave. Emperor He Qian also tried to persuade Lin Jin to stay, even offering to transfer Lin Jin to the royal capital to take up the position of chief of headquarters. Lin Jin would never agree to that, so he rejected the offer. Now that the chief of headquarters was appraiser Tan Sun, Lin Jin wasn't willing to force him out. Moreover, he really didn't want to stay in the royal capital. Maple City was a much more comfortable place. Seeing that Lin Jin had made up his mind, He Qian didn't try to persuade him to stay. Come to think of it, He Qian had gained a lot from this trip. After agreeing to meet curator next time, he had someone escort Lin Jin out of the palace. This time, it was the great eunuch Yao Xing who was in charge. Appraiser Lin. Yao Xing was extremely respectful toward Lin Jin. Although he didn't know what happened in the Jade Dragon lair, the observant Yao Xing immediately noticed that both His Majesty and the two princes were treating Lin Jin with increasing respect. Since Lin Jin was his savior, this respect came from the bottom of his heart. Lin Jin nodded. I can walk on my own. There's no need for you to escort me, eunuch Yao. Lin Jin was trying to save himself the trouble, but Yao Xing quickly shook his head. That won't do. His Majesty wants me to escort appraiser Lin back to headquarters. If I fail, I won't be able to face His Majesty. He had no choice but to let Yao Xing escort him. Along the way, Lin Jin suddenly recalled something. Eunuch Yao, are you familiar with General Liu? Since he had nothing better to do, Lin Jin thought of Liu Bin, so he casually asked. Yao Xing immediately answered with a smile, General Liu? Of course I'm familiar with him. He used to be the commander of the Royal Guards and the Flying Dragon Army. He's close to His Majesty as well. At this, Lin Jin approached him and whispered, Then, eunuch Yao, have you heard of the Valley Master? At this, Yao Xing's expression changed and he shuddered. Appraiser Lin, where did you hear of this? Lin Jin had heard about the Herb Valley's Valley Master from Liu Bin, and it was related to He Yu's mother. Lin Jin treated it as gossip, but now that he was reminded of it, he decided to ask. However, judging by Yao Xing's expression, the man clearly knew about this but was clearly wary of it. Lin Jin was just curious, but he didn't really want to probe further. He just wanted to know what kind of place this Herb Valley was, what was so special about it, and if it was an ancient Taoist heritage. However, seeing how frightened Yao Xing was, Lin Jin didn't press him further. Yao Xing breathed a sigh of relief. After all, if Lin Jin kept asking, he wouldn't know whether to answer or not. At headquarters, Yao Xing excused himself and left. Come to think of it, Lin Jin had to inform appraiser Tan Sun and the others that he was coming to headquarters. After all, it wasn't right for him to leave without informing them. Chapter 404. Now, Lin Jin's status in the beast appraiser community was different from before. Firstly, he managed to evolve 5 pet beasts during the Jade Dragon Festival, proving that he was more capable than a rank 3 beast appraiser. Secondly, Jade Dragon's Emperor personally wrote, Jade Dragon's #1 beast appraiser, and gifted it to Lin Jin. This was written by the Emperor. From then on, Lin Jin became the #1 beast appraiser in Jade Dragon Kingdom. No one dared to deny this point, and no one could deny it either. Even the rank 3 beast appraisers from headquarters were convinced of his abilities. Hence, when they learned that Lin Jin was returning to Maple City, many beast appraisers from headquarters came out to send him off. It was a grand occasion. Before he left, Lin Jin noticed Ouyang Tong among the crowd. The latter was obviously valued and had more opportunities. That was enough for him. Without another word, Lin Jin blew his whistle to summon his eagle. After bidding farewell to the crowd, he rode away on his eagle. One day before the Jade Dragon Festival, Shang'er received a handwritten letter from Lin Jin in Maple City. The letter stated that he would be staying in the royal capital for a few days. Other than some arrangements, he wanted Shang'er to bring Goldie with her to the Qiao family in Reed City to ensure that nothing happened to them. Since Lin Jin was the one who arranged this, Shang'er wasted no time. The moment she received the letter, she started making preparations. For the next few days, Coffin Man and Old Turtle stayed at Lin Jin's manor. When Coffin Man brought Old Turtle to seek help, Lin Jin wasn't around, so Shang'er had no choice but to bite the bullet. Fortunately, she had learned many of Lin Jin's skills, so she managed to save Old Turtle by accident. Not only did Old Turtle survive, but his pet beast was also saved. Old Turtle was extremely grateful for this and admitted that he owed Shang'er his life. When they heard that Miss Shang'er was going to Reed City, Coffin Man and Old Turtle volunteered to tag along. Shang'er couldn't dissuade them. Moreover, she didn't dare to delay. If she messed things up, she would be too ashamed to face Lin Jin. Hence, if Coffin Man and Old Turtle wanted to tag along, then so be it. From the moment she received the letter to the moment she set off, it might not even take half an hour. Shang'er didn't have an eagle, but her object manipulation skill had reached a higher level. Perhaps not even Lin Jin was aware of this. After all, he had been away from home all this time and hadn't practiced object manipulation. It wasn't his forte. Outside the city, Shang'er carried a reluctant Goldie in her arms and said to Coffin Man and Old Turtle, "Master Lin told me to go to Reed City immediately. If the two of you are going, remember to hold on tight and don't fall off." At first, Coffin Man didn't quite understand what was going on. It wasn't until he and Old Turtle watched in shock as Miss Shang'er used her claws to uproot a tree from afar. She then leaped onto the tree trunk. Both of them were dumbfounded as they stared at the tree trunk that was suspended in the air. When the two of them jumped up, Shang'er made a hand seal and pointed forward. The tree suddenly flew up and shot out like an arrow. Hearing the howling of the wind, Coffin Man and Old Turtle hugged the tree beside them tightly, their faces pale. No wonder Lady Shang'er told us to hurry up. The two of them finally understood. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. What kind of spell was this? To be able to control a tree and make it fly like a celestial arc was unbelievable. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed it. Especially when the one who cast this spell was a delicate-looking woman, it was even more frightening. The tree flew swiftly through the air. Coffin Man and Old Turtle didn't dare to make a sound as they held on tightly to the tree trunk. Goldie, on the other hand, was clucking excitedly, looking nothing like a rooster. Coffin Man knew that the woman in Appraiser Lin's house was a monster expert and the rooster was no ordinary chicken either. Even Shang'er found it hard to fly with so many people in tow, crossing over cities and covering thousands of miles. However, she did not dare to tarry. She crushed a spirit stone along the way to replenish her spiritual energy, and only then did she manage to reach the boundary of Reed City. Due to the lack of monster energy, she didn't control the tree when they landed. All she did was give them a warning. Then, a tree fell from the sky like an arrow, plunging into a pond. The commotion was so great that it caused a small earthquake. Half of the water in the pond splashed everywhere as if a storm had just broken out. Coffin Man and Old Turtle landed separately, looking a little haggard. Shang'er was more composed. After landing, she looked around and could already see the outline of Reed City in the distance. Qiao Feigong had been feeling uneasy. He had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. Fortunately, appraiser Lin had left the white ape behind, so Qiao Feigong felt a sense of security. Speaking of the white ape, even someone as knowledgeable as Qiao Feigong was amazed. Inside the Qiao family's guest room, the furry white ape was sitting in a custom-made outfit, mimicking Lin Jin's posture as he munched on grape. Grapes were a rare commodity in Reed City's territory. They were all shipped here from the grassy continent, and the Qiao family was only able to get their hands on them because of their business. Holding a bunch of freshly washed grapes in his hand, he could eat 7 to 8 of them in a single bite. Chewing on them, the juices bounced around in his mouth. It was a comfortable experience. This Qiao family is really nice. Not only do they make clothes for me, they even feed me. Should I try their wine tonight? At the thought of fine wine, White Ape's mouth watered. White Ape had been craving wine for a long time, but he had never dared to drink it. Master Lin didn't allow him to, saying that if he was mentally unstable, he would easily mess things up. White Ape didn't quite understand. He thought he was already very composed. Forget it. It won't be good if Master Lin finds out. Bear with it, bear with it. White Ape mumbled to himself. Calculating the time, Lin Jin had only been gone for less than a day. His influence was still lingering, so White Ape didn't dare to let loose too much. Just then, a voice came from the other side of the door. I saw a monstrous aura just now. Sure enough, there's a monster here. You monkey demon, you're the brightest star in the universe. How dare you come here to wreak havoc? Come out and face your punishment. The voice rumbled like thunder, frightening White Ape so much that he dropped the grapes in his hand. White Ape was enraged. He could tolerate other things, but this sudden act of intimidation was out of the question. Moreover, the word monkey demon didn't sit well with White Ape either. He looked outside to see a monk standing outside the yard. There weren't many temples in the Jade Dragon Kingdom, so monks were a rarity. However, there were quite a few in the grassy continent. White Ape had retained his memories of his time there, so he could recognize this person as a monk. At the mention of monks, White Ape didn't have a good impression of them. When White Ape was young, his father, the leader of the ape tribe, was killed by a monk's iron staff. White Ape witnessed it with his own eyes, and it was an unforgettable memory. Before this, he didn't understand. But ever since he followed Master Lin and gained sentience, White Ape thought about it carefully. Perhaps the ape tribe had hunted down other people's livestock and killed the invading hunters. That was why they were killed. But if someone tried to kill you, should you just wait for death? White Ape had once asked Master Lin about this. Master Lin pondered for a long time, and White Ape remembered his words clearly. If there's an enemy in this world, there's no right or wrong. Chapter 405. White Ape pondered this question for a long time before he finally understood. At this moment, it stretched out its hand to pick up the scattered grapes on the ground. Only then did it step out of the courtyard. The monk in the yard was stern and beardless, yet he exuded an air of majesty and holiness. Wielding a demon-subduing pestle, he formed a lotus seal with one hand, and his furious eyes seemed to carry electricity. Dressed in monk's robes and clean shoes, he looked clean and untainted. Having followed Lin Jin around, White Ape had seen much of the world. One look and he could tell this monk wasn't a simple character. The majestic aura emanating from him made White Ape feel uncomfortable. This monk wasn't as simple as he seemed, but White Ape wasn't one to be trifled with either. However, White Ape was now sensible, especially after learning etiquette from Lin Jin. After sizing up the monk, White Ape knew that he didn't come with good intentions but still saluted. "Greetings, master." Polite and cultured. The monk was stunned. But having spent so many years subduing monsters, he had seen all kinds of cunning demons. He decided to take down this monkey demon first before deciding what to do next. The monk had always been like this. With a swipe of his hand, the wind howled and an intimidating aura surged toward White Ape. White Ape felt like a mountain was pressing down on him. This time, White Ape couldn't hold it in anymore. He had tried his best to control himself, but the other party didn't even listen to him and attacked. White Ape listened to Master Lin and didn't want to make enemies. But since the other party had forced his hand, there was nothing he could do. Roar! White Ape let out an angry roar. His demonic energy surged and he swung his fist, forcing the other party to take a step back. Then, White Ape leaped out of the Qiao Manor. Since he was going to attack, White Ape had to leave the Qiao Manor or the family would be implicated. Monster, you can't escape. The monk leaped up and gave chase. At the same time, he spoke in a thunderous voice. I am Daluo Temple's monk Jiyin. Today, I'm here to subdue a monster. Those who have nothing to do with this, leave immediately to avoid harming the innocent. His thunderous voice could be heard throughout Reed City. In an instant, everyone panicked. Even the elderly who had never encountered something like this before were so frightened that they hid in their homes. The Qiao family was also in chaos. What's going on? I don't know. A monk barged in just now and said there was demonic energy in our manor. He was so aggressive and fast that we couldn't stop him. Quick, go and find Old Master. When Qiao Feigong came out, the White Ape and the monk were nowhere to be seen. It was obvious that they had left the city. Qiao Feigong was also scared out of his wits. Too many strange things had happened recently, and he hadn't been able to sleep well for the past few days. But now, he couldn't do anything. He could only send someone to inquire about the situation and wait at home for news. Qiao Feigong was puzzled as well. He had heard of the Daluo Temple before. It was located in the grassy continent, which was quite a distance away. Why would a monk come here? Suddenly, a fog appeared around them. Qiao Feigong knew something was wrong. Just as he was about to speak, his pet beasts and servants collapsed to the ground. Upon closer inspection, the people and beasts on the ground had all been hit by the crossbow bolt. This is bad. Qiao Feigong had a bad feeling about this. Just then, a few beasts jumped down from the top of the wall and bit a few guards to death. Then, they surrounded Qiao Feigong and the rest of the Qiao family. Qiao Feigong, if you know what's good for you, hand over the Qiao family's heirloom immediately. Otherwise, no one in the Qiao family will be spared today. Live or die, it's your choice. A voice rang out from the fog, and everyone in the Qiao family immediately turned pale with fright. Qiao Feigong now knew why he had been feeling uneasy all day. Now that the White Ape left behind by Appraiser Lin had been lured away by the monk, the Qiao family was powerless to fight back. Knowing that he couldn't protect his family heirloom today, Qiao Feigong sighed and said, "Let my family go. When I'm alone, I'll bring it back to you." The person in the fog gave it some thought before agreeing. Other than Qiao Feigong, the rest of the Qiao family was released. At the same time, 3 masked men walked out of the fog with murderous gazes. "Lord Qiao, you mustn't go back on your word. If you lie to us, you know what will happen to you," one of them said menacingly. One of them said ferociously. However, as he spoke, he also looked around as if he was afraid of something. Qiao Feigong thought about it and guessed that they were afraid that the White Ape would return. With this, Qiao Feigong was even more certain that the strange monk was lured here by these 3 men to deal with the White Ape. However, there was nothing the Qiao family could do now. All they could do was bring the 3 men to their ancestral house and retrieve their family heirloom, the wooden token. To Qiao Feigong, although this item was left behind by his ancestor, it was useless. Moreover, because of this item, the Qiao family had always been targeted by thieves. Although they had Appraiser Lin's help, Qiao Feigong understood the situation. Appraiser Lin could help them for now but not forever. Why not hand it over? At least they would be able to live in peace. However, Qiao Feigong was afraid that they would kill them after getting their hands on the token, so he said, "Listen up. Appraiser Lin will be back soon. Take the token and leave. But if you harm our family again, Appraiser Lin will avenge us." Qiao Feigong was certain that these three men were in cahoots with the thieves from before. Clearly, the thieves' accomplices were still in Reed City. They had been hiding until Appraiser Lin left, so they lured the White Ape away and took the opportunity to strike. In other words, these people were afraid of Appraiser Lin. Hence, the survival of the Qiao family depended on how much these thieves feared Appraiser Lin. At this, fear flashed across the three thieves' eyes. They were indeed members of the demonic appraisal association. Previously, they had been hiding in the city so Lin Jin didn't manage to capture them all. Later, when they returned to 9 Crescent Lakes Turtle Island, they were horrified. The massive island had been split into two, and no one on the island was spared. To them, Appraiser Lin was an existence that they couldn't afford to provoke. They had taken the risk out of desperation. If they managed to get their hands on the treasure, there was no need to kill anyone. At this thought, the three men nodded and agreed to Qiao Feigong's request. Only then did Qiao Feigong reluctantly hand the token over to them. After getting their hands on the token, the three thieves immediately left without killing anyone. Seeing that the thieves had left, Qiao Feigong slumped to the ground. His eyes were dazed, but at the same time, he was relieved. When the Qiao family returned in fear, Qiao Feigong bawled his eyes out when he saw that his family was safe and sound. It was a heart-wrenching cry. After handing over the family heirloom, Qiao Feigong felt that he had let his ancestors down. No matter how hard the Qiao family tried to persuade him, Qiao Feigong insisted on kneeling in front of the ancestral house and apologizing to his ancestors. Qiao Feigong's son, Qiao Xing, knelt behind him as well, his eyes filled with humiliation and anger. To the Qiao family's youngsters, losing their family heirloom after being forced by thieves was a great humiliation. Qiao Feigong's second uncle knelt on the ground as well. With that, the entire Qiao family was kneeling in front of the ancestral house. "Master, there's a young lady outside. She claims to be Appraiser Lin's disciple." One of the Qiao family's servants came forward to report. Chapter 406. It was mainly because Appraiser Lin held a high position in the Qiao family that the servants were afraid of delaying the matter. Qiao Feigong's eyes were red and swollen. He had lost his composure and cried earlier because his family was fine and he felt guilty towards his ancestors. Now that he had vented his emotions, Qiao Feigong regained his composure when he heard the servant's report. Appraiser Lin left yesterday, but his disciple is here today. This means that he didn't delay anything. It's just that those thieves are cunning. Qiao Feigong still had a sense of balance. Moreover, since she was Appraiser Lin's disciple, he couldn't afford to be rude. Thus, he got up, tidied his clothes, and led the Qiao family out to welcome them. Outside the Qiao manor, Shonger, who looked like a fairy, was waiting at the door while Goldie basked in the sun. Behind Shonger were Coffin Man and Old Turtle, who were both carrying a coffin on his back. At first, they only thought Shonger was pretty. But after she saved Old Turtle, they thought she had the heart of a Buddha. But after rushing over here, they began to fear her. Everything else aside, if Shonger were to use object manipulation to attack, Coffin Man and Old Turtle had rehearsed it carefully. They were no match for her at all. If Appraiser Lin's disciple is this powerful, then just how powerful is Appraiser Lin? Curator is Appraiser Lin's master. Doesn't that make him an immortal? Old Turtle couldn't resist asking Coffin Man. Coffin Man shook his head. Don't ask me. I don't know either. However, both of them had made up their minds. Now that they had the chance to help, they had to do it. Appraiser Lin would surely be overjoyed when he returned. This was especially true for Old Turtle. Fairy Shonger was his savior, so he wouldn't even frown if she asked him to risk his life for her. Moments later, someone from the Qiao family came out. It was Qiao Feigong. The Qiao family was stunned to see Shonger for the first time. Some were stunned, some had their eyes lit up, and some were dazed. Most of the dazed ones were the younger generation of the Qiao family. Qiao Xing, for example, had his eyes wide open. Qiao Feigong was an old man after all. He had just experienced an emotional roller coaster, so he quickly snapped out of it and saluted Shang'er. I'm Qiao Feigong. Are you Appraiser Lin's disciple, young lady? Shang'er was well-mannered, so she bowed. Master Lin's disciple, Lin Shang'er. Greetings, Lord Qiao. Having said that, he explained Lin Jin's arrangement. Master Lin sent me a letter asking me to come to Reed City immediately. I wonder if I'm late? Shang'er was extremely intelligent. She could tell from Qiao Feigong's haggard appearance that he had just been crying. There was also the smell of blood in the Qiao residence. Something big must have happened not long ago. Besides, Master Lin had said that he had left White Ape in Reed City, but Shang'er had sensed the demonic aura earlier and knew that White Ape was not in the Qiao residence. That was why she asked. Qiao Feigong sighed and recounted what had happened. Miss Jin, thank you for coming all the way here. However, those 3 thieves should be far away by now. Let's just leave it as it is. Losing my family heirloom in exchange for my safety is worth it. That was what Qiao Feigong was thinking, but it was clear that Shang'er was not. Shang'er knew very well why Lin Jin had sent her here. It involved a group of people, a force, and they were already at odds with Lin Jin. Since that was the case, they were enemies. If they were enemies, Shang'er would never show mercy. In that case, those 3 thieves must have used Daluo Temple's monk to lure White Ape away before showing up to steal the Qiao family's heirloom. Shang'er quickly came to a conclusion after some thought. White Ape was quite skilled, and he had been by Master Lin's side recently, so he had improved quickly. Even if Daluo Temple's monk was skilled, it wouldn't be easy for him to defeat White Ape. Even if White Ape was no match for him, he had thick skin and flesh, so he wouldn't die even if he took a beating. As for the 3 thieves who stole the Qiao family's heirloom, since they had just left, it was possible for them to catch up to them. Moreover, this matter concerned Master Lin's promise to the Qiao family. Shang'er wouldn't allow Master Lin to break his promise, no matter who it was. Hence, she grabbed Goldie and threw him into the Qiao Manor's yard. Lord Qiao, with this chicken here, no one can hurt your family. Having said that, she turned to Coffin Man and Old Turtle behind her. Gentlemen, I have a favor to ask of you. Coffin Man and Old Turtle immediately replied, Miss Shang'er, please tell us what you need. Shang'er said, I'll have to trouble you 2 to investigate the surroundings. Master Lin's other disciple, White Ape, is fighting with a monk. He should be nearby. Coffin Man said, Don't worry, Miss Shang'er. I've met with White Ape. Leave this matter to me and Old Turtle. Old Turtle didn't say anything else and immediately went to work. Shang'er planned to chase after the 3 thieves as well. Qiao Feigong couldn't help but say, Miss Shang'er, why don't we just let this go? We can't afford to offend those thieves. Sigh, we might have lost our treasure, but at least we're safe. Let's not cause any more trouble. This was Qiao Feigong's voice. Shang'er's expression was solemn. Lord Qiao, this matter is no longer your family's business. Having said that, she leaped into the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Qiao family members were dumbfounded. Qiao Feigong sighed repeatedly while Qiao Xing and the rest of the younger generation were filled with excitement and anticipation. Currently, thousands of feet above Reed City, Shang'er was hovering in the air, the ribbon around her waist fluttering in the wind. Object manipulation didn't allow her to control her own body, but it allowed her to control external objects such as clothes and ribbons. She was currently controlling the ribbon around her waist to keep it in the air. It was an incredible technique. Shang'er believed that after the 3 thieves snatched the treasure, they would leave the city as far as they could. Based on her calculations, even if they left now, they wouldn't be able to escape more than 50 miles away. However, because she didn't know where they were going, it would be almost impossible to catch up to them. Reed City was bordered on 3 sides by Jade Dragon Kingdom's territory. Only one side was connected to an intermediate country. Xiang'er speculated that if the three thieves were wary of Master Lin, they wouldn't remain in Jade Dragon Kingdom. There was a high chance that they would flee to a neighboring country and use this as an excuse to escape. At this thought, Xiang'er looked in a direction and immediately flew off. There was a pass about 100 miles away from Reed City. This was the border between Jade Dragon Kingdom and Xiang Country. It was called Mount Long Pass. After exiting the pass, it would take several dozen miles to enter Xiang Country's territory. Xiang'er didn't know about this. She had only observed the terrain along the way and could tell that if she wanted to get there, she would have to pass through the pass below. She landed immediately. It only took her a few moments to fly 100 miles using object manipulation. Xiang'er was certain that if the three thieves wanted to escape Jade Dragon Kingdom, they would have to pass through this pass, and they couldn't possibly be faster than her. In that case, as long as she waited here, she could intercept the three thieves. Qiao Feigong had previously described their appearances. She couldn't see their faces clearly because they were all masked. However, their pet beasts had killed and devoured beasts before, so they must have a bloody aura. As long as she paid more attention, they wouldn't be able to get away with it. Long Mountain Pass was the border between the two countries. It was surrounded by undulating mountains and the terrain was dangerous. If one wanted to cross the border, they could only pass through the pass. There were 500 soldiers guarding the pass, and because it was an important transportation route, there were many caravans coming and going. As time passed, it actually became a small city. There were also relay stations and guest houses in the center. There were all kinds of businesses, restaurants, ticket houses, and escort companies. Although it was small, it had all the essentials. Chapter 407. The city of Mount Long Pass was bustling with activity. Merchants were the main traffic, but there were also people from the martial world. Taoists and other cultivators were a common sight as well. At this moment, in an inn in Guan City, several monks were meditating and chanting sutras in a room. Among them, an old monk with long ears, white eyebrows, and stern eyes held 108 Bodhi beads in his hands. Most of the beads glowed with spiritual light and seemed to be crystal clear. There seemed to be something swimming in them, and one could vaguely hear the roars of beasts, but no matter how carefully one listened, one could not hear anything. The old monk opened his eyes and asked, "Is Ji-in back?" A young monk hurriedly stood up and bowed. "First monk, senior brother Ji-in isn't back yet." The old monk frowned. "It took so long to catch a little demon. When he's back, I want him to copy the demon-subduing heart sutra 50 times. The young monk shuddered in fear. It took him a long time to recite the demon-subduing heart sutra once. Copying it 50 times would be the worst form of torture. At that moment, a kind-looking monk said, "Sir, the people who blocked the way asking for help and said that there were monkey demons wreaking havoc in Reed City are evil as well." The old monk was very polite to the monk beside him. "Jinyan, I know what you're worried about, but humans can be taught and demons can be punished. Daluo Temple has been around for 1,000 years and has saved countless people and slain countless demons. That's why the world has converted and thousands of monks come to worship us. Which Buddhist sect in the world can compare to Daluo Temple? Either we've fallen or we've become swindlers. If we didn't have the heart to slay demons, Daluo Temple wouldn't have lasted until now." The monk named Jinyan smiled. "You're right, sir. But if the wicked don't put down their weapons, aren't they no different from demons? Should the exorcism hall punish them or not?" The old monk's expression froze. "Jinyan, I know that you have a profound understanding of Buddhism, but that was then and this is now." There was a hidden meaning in the old monk's words. Jinyan glanced at the prayer beads in the old monk's hand and shook his head without saying anything. At this moment, one of the Buddhist beads in the old monk's hand began to glow. Apart from that, the metal rings on the Buddhist staff began to vibrate and emit a buzzing sound. "There's demonic energy," The old monk got up and put the Buddhist beads around his neck. He held the Buddhist staff in one hand and rushed out. His speed was so fast that ordinary people could only see an afterimage. Jin Yen immediately walked out of the room as well. One could see a trace of helplessness on his face. Just as Shang'er predicted, the 3 demonic appraisers who escaped from the Qiao family were planning to leave through Mount Long Pass. Although they were in disguise, the scent of blood on their pet beasts couldn't be concealed. Moreover, they had been harboring ulterior motives to begin with. When Shang'er stopped them and questioned them, they immediately gave themselves away. Perhaps thinking that a frail woman was bold enough to stand in their way, one of them tried to capture Shang'er but was stopped by Shang'er. Currently, the unfortunate demonic appraiser was wailing in pain on the ground. One of his hands had been pierced by his own sword and was pinned to the ground. He didn't know whether he should pull it out or not. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. The sword was enchanted with a spell so it felt as heavy as 1,000 kilograms. He couldn't pull it out at all. The other 2 demonic appraisers were horrified at this sight. The seemingly weak Shang'er was clearly a tough nut to crack. Knowing their limits, the 2 of them ignored their partner, who was wailing on the ground, and split up to escape. At the same time, their pet beasts howled and pounced on them with bloodshot eyes. Shang'er frowned. She had already used her suppressive force. Logically speaking, most pet beasts wouldn't dare to move. Her suppressive force was unleashed using her own demonic energy. Rank 1 and Rank 2 pet beasts wouldn't be able to withstand it, and even Rank 3 beasts would be affected. However, her opponent's pet beast wasn't affected at all. He must have used some kind of spell. After learning under Lin Jin, Shang'er had learned quite a bit. She was knowledgeable enough to know that there were many ways to make a pet beast go berserk for blood. But they were just 2 pet beasts. With a flick of Shang'er's finger, the swords hanging from the waists of 2 merchants flew out at lightning speed and killed the 2 pet beasts. At this sight, the tiny Mount Long Pass was plunged into chaos. Shang'er raised her hand and grabbed at the air. One of the 2 demonic appraisers who had split up to escape was captured by her. The man was sent flying into the air as he screamed in fear. Just as Shang'er was about to deal with the other one, a loud bellow rang out. "Monster, how dare you wreak havoc in broad daylight? Witness my Thunder Zen demon exorcism, Man Mitra Ra." Following this mantra, a 9-ringed staff descended from the sky, striking at Shang'er with lightning. Shang'er immediately sensed danger. She couldn't control the staff with object manipulation. With a wave of her hand, she summoned a millstone about 10 meters away and used it as a shield. There was a loud boom. Lightning exploded and the heavy millstone shattered into pieces. Shang'er quickly dodged but was still struck by a bolt of lightning from the staff. With a cry of surprise, she fell to the ground. Only then did the old monk descend to the ground. He grabbed the staff and formed a spell with one hand. His eyes were sharp, his white brows fluttered, and his monk's robes fluttered. His aura was like that of a celestial being. "It's an eminent monk from Daluo Temple." The eminent monk said that woman is a monster. It's no wonder she can manipulate objects from a distance. The eminent monk must be telling the truth. "Master, please exorcise this monster." The merchants around them began to speak. They were truly startled earlier, but they didn't notice that none of them were injured. Shang'er gritted her teeth and got up. That bolt of lightning was so powerful that half of her body was numb. She looked at the demonic appraiser, who had run far away and wanted to stop him. "Monster, how dare you hurt others? Witness my Buddha's radiance, thunder concealment seal." With a scoff, the old monk struck with his palm. Lightning surged from his palm, stirring up a strong gust of wind. Helpless, Shang'er had no choice but to deal with this attack. Because of this, the demonic appraiser had already run out of the city and was nowhere to be seen. Although Shang'er had a good temperament and treated others kindly, it didn't mean that she didn't have a temper. This old monk attacked her the moment he arrived and even injured her. More importantly, He let one of the demonic appraisers escape. How could Shang'er not be angry? Shang'er raised a finger and pointed. More than 10 trees around them were uprooted and thrown at the old monk. The latter was shocked as he roared, Akalanatha Protector, Azure Lion, Mountain Ape, break. The old monk removed the Buddha beads around his neck. 2 of the beads immediately detached themselves and transformed into a giant lion and a black ape that was about 50 to 60 feet tall. The black ape swung its fists, shattering the trees that were hurtling towards it. The lion, on the other hand, roared and pounced at Shang'er. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people who were originally watching the show also fled in fright. After all, this scene was not something that ordinary people could endure. Even the braver ones didn't dare to stay any longer. If they accidentally got caught in the crossfire, their lives would be in danger. Hence, the crowd scattered in an instant. Chapter 408. However, the soldiers guarding the pass had no way of escaping. 500 soldiers had already gathered nearby, and the officer guarding the pass was still in shock. He immediately sent a messenger bird to the city lord's mansion of Reed City while waiting to see what would happen next. Shang'er was currently locked in combat with the wild lion. The wild lion was at least level 3, close to level 4. Although it was powerful, it was no match for Shang'er. A moment later, Shang'er took out dozens of swords and sabers that were scattered around her. She controlled them from all directions and stabbed the lion beast. However, when the swords and sabers entered its body, there was no blood. After that, the wild lion howled and turned into a cloud of mist. At the same time, one of the Buddha beads in the old monk's hand cracked open. Originally, it had been glowing brightly, but now, with the death of the wild lion, it had become dull and lifeless. The Buddha beads were enchanted artifacts and were obviously not easy to refine. The old monk looked pained and his heart was bleeding. Arrogant demon, I will definitely kill you today. With that, the old monk tossed the Buddha beads in his hand. 10,000 beasts convert, Buddha light illuminates the world, Prajna heavens, mountain reverence command. As the Buddhist chants rippled, the glowing beads flew out of them. Some were tigers, some were peacocks, and some were even fox demons. There were dozens of them. These dozens of streams of light flew up and formed a Buddha light that floated above the old monk's head. Under the illumination of the Buddha light, the phantom of a 1,000-armed Buddha appeared. After that, the earth trembled and a powerful pressure smashed down on the old monk's head. It was as if an invisible mountain was falling down. Shang'er saw it clearly. The beads that flew out were all the spirit essences of demon beasts. None of them were lower than level 3. Some were even level 4 demon beasts. They were all gathered together and filled with the old monk's magic power. Even a random curse would be 100 times more powerful. Shang'er knew her own limits. Although she cultivated the Demon King incantation and was extremely powerful, the old monk was stronger. However, Shang'er couldn't retreat now. Everlasting black wind. Shang'er used all her technique. Her eyes glowed with demonic light and her demonic aura surged. Even when she got close, the demonic aura was like flames. Behind her, the image of a fox demon's tail swayed. 1 split into 2, 2 split into 3. It seemed to have 3 demon tails. Black wind started to blow around them. The earth and rocks under their feet shattered and rose upwards, forming a barrier to block the old monk's spell. The next moment the two collided. Rumble! The entire Mount Long Pass was directly collapsed, and the area within 100 feet collapsed. Fortunately, the merchants and passers-by in the city had all escaped, or there would have been a lot of casualties. However, there were also unfortunate ones like the 2 demonic appraisers who were captured by Shang'er earlier. Since they couldn't escape, they were buried under the soil. Chief Senior Brother, things have gotten out of hand. In the distance, Jin Yen Monk landed at the edge of the collapse with a horrified look on his face. He clearly had some tricks up his sleeves, but he was in a rather sorry state at the moment. After all, he had to get out of the range of the collapse. On the other side, the demon subjugation hall's first seat, also known as the Old Monk, was shrouded in Buddhist light, allowing him to hover in midair. He held the Buddhist staff in one hand and the unconscious young monk in the other. He had a solemn expression on his face. His monk robes had been slashed by a sharp sword at some point, exposing his upper body. Despite his age, his muscles were strong. A slash could be seen from his abdomen all the way up to his neck. He must have been slashed by a sharp sword. Although he was injured, it wasn't serious. He landed at the edge of the collapse and said, "I've underestimated this fox demon." Then, his expression changed and blood trickled down the corner of his lips. "Senior Brother Head, are you all right?" Monk Jinyan hurried forward. "I'm fine. I have the Buddha's light of 10,000 beasts to protect me." Fortunately, that was the case. Otherwise, I would have been sliced in half by that fox demon's sneak attack. The old monk looked apprehensive. At the last moment, a long saber flew out of nowhere and slashed from the bottom to the top. At that time, the speed was extremely fast and unpredictable. If it wasn't for the Buddha's aura protecting the old monk's body, making him impenetrable by swords and spears, he would have really died there. That fox demon took a hit from my mountain order and should be dead. However, it's better to be safe. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse. The old monk was about to head down after saying that, but his wound was bleeding profusely. Jin Yen stopped him and said, "Senior brother, no monster can withstand your dharma. That fox demon is dead for sure. You're heavily injured and the Wisdom King Buddhist beads are severely damaged. You have to return to Daluo Temple to repair them. Otherwise, they might be destroyed. This instrument has been passed down for thousands of years. It would be a shame if it were to be destroyed in our hand." The old monk's expression softened when he heard Jin Yen's advice. Indeed, the intensity of the battle had exceeded his expectations. More importantly, his Wisdom King Buddhist beads were mostly cracked. It would be terrible if they were not repaired. Glancing at the completely destroyed Mount Long Pass, the old monk decided not to head down to investigate. Instead, he heeded Jin Yen's advice and returned to Daluo Temple. As Jin Yen left, he stole a glance at the ruined crater and sighed. No one knew why he was sighing. The three monks left. None of the 500 soldiers dared to stop them. Firstly, Daluo Temple was famous in every state, so the people of Jade Dragon Kingdom had heard of it. Secondly, Daluo Temple's eminent monk was subduing a monster and not an enemy country. Moreover, the 500 soldiers knew very well that they couldn't stop him even if they wanted to. However, with such a major incident and the destruction of Mount Long Pass, they had to report it to their superiors. As for the crater that was more than 100 feet deep, no one dared to go down. The next day, the city lord of Reed City personally came to investigate. Since the Jade Dragon Festival was on the next day, the city lord pondered for a long time before writing a letter to his superiors. Although a pass had been destroyed, it wasn't an enemy country. This way, they could rebuild Mount Long Pass and apply for a sum of money. As for the monster at the bottom of the crater, the city lord came to the same conclusion as everyone else. The one who made the move yesterday was the rector of Daluo Temple's Hall of Exorcism. He was an expert of the present age, and was not someone an average country could afford to offend. Furthermore, it was not hard to imagine how terrifying the rector of exorcism must have been to create such a huge crater. No monster would have been able to survive that. Hence, they just had to ignore the crater. Another day passed, and it was the day of the Jade Dragon Festival. Every city in Jade Dragon Kingdom had their own celebrations, and Reed City was no exception. The city lord of Reed City also received news that a member of the Guardian would be coming tomorrow afternoon to investigate the situation. This made him feel more at ease. Amidst the festive atmosphere of the Jade Dragon Festival, two figures appeared beside the crater in Mount Long Pass. One of them was carrying a coffin while the other was hunched over. "We've been asking around and we can confirm that Miss Rower fought Daluo Temple's rector here 2 days ago. In the end, she was beaten into the ground by that old monk," Coffin Man said through gritted teeth. Old Turtle looked like he was about to kill someone. "I swear that even if I have to spend the rest of my life, I will kill that old bald donkey to avenge Miss Rower." That being said, both Coffin Man and Old Turtle knew that Daluo Temple's monks weren't to be trifled with. Both of them were experts on the villainous ranking board and were known as the Nanling deities 50 years ago. Hence, they knew that Daluo Temple was a sacred Buddhist sect with a 1,000-year-old heritage. They had once produced Buddhist immortals and their heritage had never been lost. Even if the 5 deities of Nanling were at their peak, it would be impossible for them to go against Daluo Temple, let alone now. Appraiser Lin's mount, the White Ape, fought with Daluo Temple's monk. "We chased after it for 500 miles, but all we saw was a collapsed mountain and a broken riverbed. We didn't see the White Ape or the monk. Later on, we couldn't even find a trace of him. I'm afraid he's done for." Coffin Man pounded the ground with his fists, cracking the rocks on the ground. "With the current situation, we have to inform Appraiser Lin as soon as possible. Both of us should return to Maple City at once. Perhaps he has already returned. Whether it's finding the White Ape or seeking revenge on that old bald donkey, only Appraiser Lin can do it. If he can't, there's still Curator. Daluo Temple, you guys have a 1,000-year-old heritage, but you have no idea how much trouble you've caused this time. Let's go." Immediately, Coffin Man and Old Turtle returned to Maple City as fast as they could. Since they didn't have flying mounts and were only relying on their feet, it naturally took some time. Even though they traveled through the night, they still arrived at Maple City early the next morning. Chapter 409. Coincidentally, not long after Coffin Man and Old Turtle returned, Lin Jean arrived at Maple City on his eagle beast. Naturally, they ran into each other. When Lin Jean saw Coffin Man and Old Turtle, he came to a realization. He was so busy that he forgot about Old Coffin. Indeed, he was the one who asked Madame Ghostchild to inform Old Coffin to retrieve Zombie Cthulhu. Lin Jean didn't know the person next to Old Coffin, but he seemed to be an old friend. In the next instant, both Coffin Man and Old Turtle knelt on the ground. "Appraiser Lin, we were useless." Moments later, an eagle's cry came from the sky above Maple City. Lin Jean remained expressionless as he rode his eagle beast toward Reed City. Due to his anxiety, Lin Jean cast a spell to spur the eagle. The eagle's size doubled and its flying speed increased exponentially as well. At a time like this, Lin Jean couldn't care less. Coffin Man and Old Turtle told Lin Jean everything they knew. Lin Jean only knew that White Ape's whereabouts were unknown after his battle with Daluo Temple's monk. Shang'er was defeated in a battle with Daluo Temple's rector, and was buried in Mount Long Pass. One could only imagine how Lin Jean felt when he heard this news. Lin Jean had a good temper, but the more amiable a person was, the more they wouldn't let it go after their sore spot was touched. "Daluo Temple, if anything happens to Shang'er and White Ape, I, Lin Jean, will eradicate every last one of you." Lin Jean was enraged like never before. He was even angrier than when he was dealing with Yang Qingshi. Yang Qingshi didn't harm anyone close to Lin Jean after all. But this time, it was Shang'er and White Ape who Lin Jean acknowledged as his disciples. Enhanced by the spell, the eagle beast moved as fast as lightning. In less than half an hour, Lin Jean arrived at Reed City's territory. Lin Jean couldn't care less about anything else. He had the eagle land on the Qiao Manor and leaped into the mansion. There were some things Lin Jean had to ask the Qiao family. Qiao Feigong came out at the sound of the voice. At first, he was stunned to see Lin Jean. Then, he hurried over to greet him. At the same time, Goldie hopped over from the yard. Upon seeing Lin Jean, Goldie chuckled and leaped into Lin Jin's arms. Appraiser Lin, you're finally here. Xiao Feigong had been on tenterhooks for the past 2 days. He had heard about what happened at Long Mountain Pass, and had even sent people to the scene to take a look. It was said that the entire Long Mountain Pass had been destroyed overnight. The crater that had been created was 10 feet deep, and the edges were more than 1,000 feet deep. This was completely beyond the understanding of mortals, so it was not an exaggeration to say that the Qiao family was trembling with fear. Lin Jin knew the Qiao family couldn't be blamed for this, so he asked about what happened that day. Qiao Feigong told him everything he knew. Combining what Coffin Man and Old Turtle had said, Lin Jin had a general understanding of the situation. In other words, right after White Ape was lured away by Daluo Temple's monk, thieves came to steal the Qiao family's heirloom. Lin Jin knew there must be a connection between the two incidents. However, Lin Jin didn't know the details and he didn't want to guess. He glanced at Xiao Feigong and said, "Qiao family head, since the treasure has been taken, the Qiao family will be safe." This was the truth. That's right. If I had known this would happen, I would have given the item to those thieves. Sigh, so many people have died because of this. It's really a sin. But it's good that we can have peace in exchange. I just hope that there will be less trouble in the future. Xiao Feigong was really scared out of his wits this time. Lin Jin nodded. He didn't tell Xiao Feigong what he was planning to do because he didn't want to scare the man. Now, it seemed like Daluo Temple and demonic appraisers had an unexplainable relationship. Otherwise, why would they help demonic appraisers? No matter what happened, since Daluo Temple dared to lay a hand on White Ape and Shonger, Lin Jin wouldn't let this matter rest. Even if he had to stir up a storm, even if he had to create a bloodbath, Lin Jin would seek justice. Lord Xiao, I still have important matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you any longer. Having said that, Lin Jin leaped onto the cloud stairs and landed on the back of the eagle beast. With a loud cry, the eagle soared toward Mount Long Pass. The wind howled. Under Lin Jin's stern expression, Goldie could sense traces of murderous intent. Despite his usual carefree personality, he was surprisingly well-behaved now. It only took a moment for the eagle beast to travel from Reed City to Mount Long Pass. In fact, looking down from the sky, one could already see the terrifying crater in the mountain range in the distance. Lin Jin's heart thumped wildly at this sight. What kind of technique and supernatural power was this to create such terrifying destructive power? To be able to pierce through the mountain range and destroy the surface of the land, one could imagine how terrifying the battle back then was. Lin Jin leaped into the air and landed on the edge of the crater. At the same time, there was a group of people standing beside the crater. There were soldiers guarding them, and most of them were officials dressed in official robes. One of them had an imposing aura and an air of arrogance about him. Before Lin Jin landed, they had already noticed the eagle beast flying toward them. Be it in the Jade Dragon Kingdom or any other country, eagles were considered expensive items that only the nobles could own. Hence, the group stopped to watch. When they saw a young man alighting from the eagle beast, they were slightly disappointed. "City Lord Wang, is that person from Reed City?" The middle-aged man with the most imposing aura asked with a frown. The person addressed as City Lord Wang was the City Lord of Reed City, Wang Yuanqiao. The person he was accompanying was Chen Ryuan, an adjunct of Jade Dragon Kingdom's Iron Feather Army, who was also a guardian of the nation. This man had a high status and extraordinary background. Even Reed City's City Lord, Wang Yuanqiao, had to treat him with respect. Wang Yuanqiao took a look and shook his head. "Adjunct Chen, I've never seen that person before. He probably isn't from Reed City." Chen Ryuan nodded and didn't ask further. However, he could tell that the adjunct was displeased. He probably thought that person was being too rude. If he was an ordinary citizen, he would be offending an official by acting so rashly. But if he was someone with a special status, it meant that he didn't think much of Chen Ryuan. It would be inexcusable if he didn't greet him. Wang Yuanxiao could tell, so he turned around to inform his subordinate. Soon, the city lord manor's steward came over. May I know who you are? This is an important military location. If you're a citizen, please leave at once. If you're an official, please state your identity, the steward said. Lin Jin wasn't in the mood to entertain him. Forget a steward of the city lord manor, even if He Qian was here. He wouldn't have the time to greet him. Because Lin Jin sensed a faint trace of demonic energy below. This was a huge discovery. In a flash, Lin Jin leaped down from the edge. You can't. Startled, the steward immediately controlled his pet beast to stop Lin Jin. However, he soon realized that no matter what he did, his pet beast wouldn't budge, as if it was frozen in place. In the blink of an eye, Lin Jin had jumped into the deep pit. After a few leaps, he disappeared. Lord City Lord, that person, I saw him. City Lord Wang was even more observant. When Lin Jin leaped down, he vaguely saw the beast pattern on his sleeve. And it was a 3-ringed sleeve. Chapter 410. City Lord Wang's heart skipped a beat when he saw that it was a 3-ringed sleeve. As the lord of a city, how could he not know what a 3-ringed sleeve represented? There was a beast appraiser branch in Reed City under his jurisdiction, but there was no rank 3 beast appraiser there. This is ridiculous. Chen Ryuan was infuriated. It was fine if the other party was disrespectful and disregarded him. Chen Ryuan had a high self-esteem, so even if he was unhappy, he wouldn't hold it against the other party, nor would he make things difficult for him on the spot. But that person suddenly jumped down, so it was not possible. He was fully in charge of the situation here under the general's orders. Although he was certain that the monster struck down by the Daluo temple monk was dead, there were still accidents. He had originally come here under orders to gather manpower, planning to fill up the huge pit, but in the end, he actually encountered a hothead who jumped in. Although Chen Ryuan didn't care if the other party lived or died, the problem was that if word got out, wouldn't it mean that he had no control over the situation? What would his superior think of him? Chen Ryuan jumped down as well, intending to drag the other party out. Impudent brat, I'll teach you a lesson later. Chen Ryuan was also a guardian of the nation and one of the few in Jade Dragon Kingdom who owned a rank 4 pet beast. Of course, he was also very confident in his abilities. 10 feet deep, Chen Ryuan only needed to borrow some force to land. The boulders below were twisted and the soil was shattered. However, there were also many large cracks that extended downward. No one knew what was down there. However, this proved even more clearly that the kid who had suddenly disappeared must have burrowed into some sort of crack. The crack was about 4 to 5 feet wide, so it shouldn't be a problem for a person to go down. Chen Ryuan went to the spot where the kid disappeared. Sure enough, there was a crack leading downward. Cursing, Chen Ryuan jumped down as well. He had to go down if he wanted to drag the person out. However, when he went down, he discovered that there was another world below. There was actually a huge hole, and from the looks of it, it was naturally formed. It should have been exposed after the collapse of this place. There was a huge rock covering the top, and only a few cracks could be used to enter. However, the hole wasn't curved. Below it was a space that was several feet wide. Currently, the kid who jumped down was standing there with something in his arms. Chen Ryuan was furious. Stinking brat, this is an important place. How can I allow you to mess around here? Hurry up and scram. At the same time, it reached out with its claw. He was using the beast grip. The silhouette of a beast appeared on Chen Ryuan's body. This was his pet beast, sealed inside his body with the power of the Beastmaster's second scroll. With this, Chen Ryuan's strength was 10 times stronger than an average person. But this time, it was knocked away by an invisible force. Chen Ryuan retreated a few steps before stabilizing himself. At the same time, his heart was filled with shock. Brat, who exactly are you? Chen Ryuan dared not let his guard down. Under normal circumstances, the Beastmaster's second scroll would suffice, but in a situation like this, he had no choice but to summon his pet beast. Golden Armored Bear, come out! Without another word, Chen Ryuan formed a hand seal. The beast's shadow on his body immediately materialized, and a huge golden armored bear appeared. However, just as half of the beast's body was revealed, Lin Jin gently extended a hand and pressed against the air. Go back! Chen Ryuan's casual words, coupled with the pressure from a distance, caused the ferocious golden armored bear to be forced back into Chen Ryuan's body by an invisible force. The Beastmaster's second scroll that was about to break out of its seal was stabilized once more and strengthened. Chen Ryuan was completely dumbfounded. His eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at the scene before him. He stuttered, this. After uttering a few words, he couldn't even form a complete sentence. He couldn't be blamed for this. This was Chen Ryuan's first time encountering a situation like this. To think someone could actually force his pet beast, which was about to break out of its seal, back inside. Who was he supposed to reason with? He had never encountered a situation like this before. Just as Chen Ryuan was at a loss for what to do and his heart was filled with fear, Lin Jin finally spoke up. Greetings, sir. Due to the urgency of the situation, Lin Jin jumped down without informing you. It was indeed a little rash. Sir, if you ask who I am, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lin Jin, Chief of Maple City's Beast Appraisal Association. Lin Jin. When Chen Ryuan heard this name, he was immediately stunned. Although the Iron Feather Army that he was in wasn't stationed in Monarch City and was stationed in the south, he knew quite a bit about the happenings in Monarch City. During the Jade Dragon Festival celebration yesterday, Iron Feather Army's general had gone to the royal capital to attend the celebration. When he returned that night, he informed Chen Ryuan of something. His Majesty the Emperor had personally conferred Lin Jin the title of Jade Dragon's #1 appraiser. The general had also witnessed Lin Jin evolving the 5 selected pet beasts through drawing lot. Needless to say, he was astounded. When he returned and told Chen Ryuan about it, the general seemed to be filled with admiration for appraiser Lin. Could this man be Jade Dragon's #1 appraiser? That had to be it. Chen Ryuan was instantly sure. If he wasn't Jade Dragon's #1 appraiser, who else could force his pet beast that was about to break out of its seal back into its body? At this moment, Chen Ryuan's attitude took a 180-degree turn. With a smile, Chen Ryuan took a step forward and saluted. So it's appraiser Lin. Apologies for my rudeness. I am the Iron Feather Army's general, Chen Ryuan. It's my honor to be able to meet you today, appraiser Lin. Although Chen Ryuan was an arrogant man, that only applied to his subordinate. He valued strength above all else, and Lin Jin was no doubt a capable man. Not only was Lin Jin a favorite of His Majesty, but he was also a guardian of the nation. Someone like Lin Jin couldn't be offended, and he had to try his best to befriend him. Lin Jin nodded at Chen Ryuan. Lord Chen, there's something I need your help with. Chen Ryuan immediately replied, Appraiser Lin, you're too kind. Just tell me what you need and I'll do it for you. Lin Jin glanced at the thing in his arms and said, Lord Chen, I'll have to trouble you to stand guard outside this pit for a day. During this time, don't let anyone enter. Chen Ryuan could now see clearly that Lin Jin was carrying a little fox in his arms. However, the little fox seemed to be unconscious and he couldn't tell if it was dead or alive. Also, the little fox's tail was furry and it looked like it had more than one tail. Recalling the rumors, Chen Ryuan had a hunch. But with Lin Jin around, he wouldn't go looking for trouble, so he said, It's a small matter. Don't worry, appraiser Lin. I'll stand guard outside. Forget one day, even 3 to 5 days won't be a problem. Lin Jin nodded in thanks before Chen Ryuan took his leave. Once outside, Chen Ryuan regained his usual arrogant demeanor. He leaped onto the wall of the pit and said to Wang Yuanqiao, "City Lord Wang, it's fine now. That man was my good friend." Wang Yuanqiao wasn't a fool, so he didn't believe Lin Jin. However, he couldn't expose Lin Jin's lies either. When it was time to be muddle-headed, one had to be muddle-headed. "So it's Lord Chen's good friend. It's fine then." Wang Yuanqiao looked relaxed and didn't mention anything about the intruder trespassing. "City Lord Wang, you may head back first. I'll stay here and wait for my friend to come out to catch up. I won't take up any more of your time." Chen Ryuan began chasing him away. He didn't intend to share this opportunity to befriend Appraiser Lin with anyone else. Just as City Lord Wang and the others were leaving in bewilderment, Lin Jin caressed the little fox's head and said, "Shang'er, I'll avenge you." Chapter 4:11. Perhaps hearing him, the little fox in his arms opened her weak eyes and stuck out her tongue to lick Lin Jin's fingers before falling back to sleep weakly. This little fox was obviously Shang'er's original form. It was Lin Jin's first time seeing Shang'er in her three-tailed fox form. She was incredibly adorable, but she was severely injured. Otherwise, with Shang'er's capabilities, she wouldn't have been forced back into her original form. As a monster, the cultivation of transfiguration was divided into several stages. At the beginning stage, one could only maintain a human form for a short period of time. Once they reached the next stage, they could maintain their human form for a long period of time without reverting to their original form. Shang'er was one such example. Of course, if she was forced back into her original form under such circumstances, it would be equivalent to destroying her previous body. She would have to wait until her injuries and cultivation recovered before she could transform again. To Lin Jin, this wasn't important. Treating her as soon as possible and helping her recover was his priority. Come to think of it, Lin Jin had been feeling uneasy before he came down here. It wasn't until he saw Shang'er on the verge of death that he breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Shang'er wasn't dead, he could save her. At the same time, a murderous intent surged within him. Daluo Temple had injured Shang'er to this extent. Lin Jin couldn't let this go so easily. He had to make them pay. Using the pulse-seeking technique, Lin Jin had protected Shang'er's heart. When Lin Jin said that as long as Shang'er still had a breath left in her body, he could save her, it wasn't an empty promise. He wasn't boasting either. He truly had the ability to do so. Shang'er belonged to the wind element, and wind was considered wood among the 5 elements. Water and wood could fuse and complement each other. Without hesitation, Lin Jin took out the water reservoir armor and placed it on Shang'er's abdomen, using the armor's pure water spiritual energy to heal her. As for the pills, Lin Jin had already given them to Shang'er. Next up was to use acupuncture techniques and unrefined fire to mend Shang'er's damaged veins. This was a meticulous task that couldn't be disturbed. Hence, Lin Jin asked Chen Ryuan to stand guard outside. Time passed slowly and the sun set. Under the dusk, the remaining light cast a crimson glow on the surroundings. Then, the sun set and the moon hung high in the sky. Outside, Chen Ryuan was really guarding there. As a member of the nation's guardian and one of the top experts in the Jade Dragon Kingdom, Chen Ryuan didn't feel tired at all. He was just curious as to what Appraiser Lin was doing down there. When night fell, the originally bright moon and starry sky suddenly changed the weather. Unbeknownst to everyone, rain clouds had actually gathered. In less than 2 hours, the rain clouds had already covered the entire sky, blocking out the moon. Chen Ryuan felt a cool breeze, mixed with a bit of moisture. Looking up at the sky, he knew that a thunderstorm would soon fall. "Why am I so unlucky?" Chen Ryuan muttered to himself. There was no place to take shelter from the rain. What would they do if it really started to rain? Also, this deep pit would definitely be filled with rainwater. Appraiser Lin had to be reminded of this so that he could be prepared. With this in mind, Chen Ryuan leaped down to the crack below. After some thought, he called out softly, Appraiser Lin. Very quickly, a response came from below. What's the matter, Lord Shin? Chen Ryuan quickly said, It's like this. The weather has changed and I'm afraid that a thunderstorm will fall soon. I'm afraid, Lin Jin's voice came through. Thank you for your warning, Lord Chen. It's already dark so no one should be here. Lord Chen, you may leave now. I will surely pay you a visit another day to thank you. His words were polite. Now that Shang'er's condition had improved, Lin Jin's mood had improved as well. Chen Ryuan gave it some thought before nodding. In that case, please be careful, Appraiser Lin. I shall take my leave now. Take care, Lord Chen. Upon hearing the response from the crack, Chen Ryuan went back up, intending to leave. However, after walking out for a while, he saw a slanted wall up ahead. Beside it was a broken pillar so he could take shelter from the rain and rest inside. The weather was getting gloomier. For some reason, Chen Ryuan didn't leave. Instead, he turned back to look at the deep pit in the distance. The weather is unpredictable. I'm afraid there will be a thunderstorm soon and Appraiser Lin will surely come out soon. After all, the bottom of that pit can't stop the rain from flowing in. I'll stay here for a while longer. Who knows, I might be able to help, Chen Ryuan muttered to himself. He knew how great it was to be crowned the #1 beast appraiser by the Emperor himself. At the same time, Lin Jin had proven his capabilities as a beast appraiser. According to the general, Appraiser Lin's rank had already been raised to at least rank 3 among the high-ranking officials in the royal court. He might even be a rank 4 beast appraiser. If there was a chance, Chen Ryuan would definitely cling to someone like him. Chen Ryuan even suspected that His Majesty was playing a big game of chess. Perhaps it was to prepare for Jade Dragon Kingdom's promotion to a premium country. To become a premium country, a rank 5 pet beast was a must. If Appraiser Lin really was a rank 4 beast appraiser, he would definitely be the one to help them get promoted to rank 5. So, who would be lucky enough to get the chance to get promoted to rank 5? All the members of the Guardian should have the chance. If they could establish a good relationship with Appraiser Lin, it would only be beneficial in the future. With this in mind, Chen Ryuan didn't leave. Instead, he stayed less than 500 meters away to observe the situation. Sure enough, as Chen Ryuan expected, in less than an hour, there was already the sound of thunder. However, what surprised Chen Ryuan was that the lightning in the clouds was actually concentrated on the deep pit, and there was no lightning anywhere else. This was Chen Ryuan's first time encountering such a strange phenomenon. In fact, Lin Jin, who was in the pit, could feel the lightning above his head. That's odd. Lin Jin closed his eyes to sense it before summoning Xiaohua. There was nothing to fear in the rainforest. The water reservoir armor had many supernatural powers, and one of them was the ability to repel water. Even if rainwater were to pour in, as long as the armor was powered by mana, there would be nothing to worry about. Forget rainwater, there was no need to be afraid of rivers, lakes, or oceans. But lightning was different. Lin Jin's sharp senses told him that something was amiss. At once, he took a closer look at Shang'er's evaluation results and finally noticed something he had overlooked. Among the results provided by the museum, there were many ways to resolve the problem and cure it. One of them was lightning seal binding. Lin Jin had wanted to treat Shang'er first, so he hadn't thought about it. Now that he read it again, Lin Jin finally understood. Daluo Temple's Exorcist Hall's Rector. What a vicious move. After seeing the lightning strike, Lin Jin could no longer suppress the rage within him. The so-called lightning seal was actually a type of curse. Since ancient times, cultivators had been researching curses. Some curses were like maggots in one's bones, silently entangling one's body and triggering an explosion under certain circumstances. This lightning seal was one such curse. That Exorcist Hall's rector was clearly a vicious person. Afraid that Shang'er wouldn't die, he had placed a lightning seal on her during the battle. That way, once Shang'er recovered, she would be triggered immediately. This Thunder Seal curse art was extremely mysterious. It should be an extremely high-level spell. Once it was triggered, it could silently cause thunderclouds to gather. Then, the Thunder Seal would trigger the heavenly thunder. When the heavenly thunder came crashing down, any demon would be annihilated. But the problem was, this spell was too vicious. If Lin Jin didn't have the Museum of Deadly Beasts that could identify a beast state, he might not have noticed it. Admittedly, Daluo Temple's 1,000-year legacy was a testament to their existence. Now that Lin Jin knew that the lightning seal had been triggered, divine lightning could strike down at any moment. Chapter 412. Lin Jin knew that this Thunder Seal was no small matter. It must have been cultivated for many years, and it was incredibly precious. If it were him, he wouldn't have used it unless it was under special circumstances. In other words, Shang-Er must have hurt the enemy back then, which infuriated them. That was why she decided to use this Thunder Seal. If the Thunder Seal was triggered, the monster would be killed. If it wasn't, the monster would surely come back to retrieve it in a few days. This was just Lin Jin's guess. He couldn't be sure if that was the case. But now, Lin Jin had to make a decision on how to deal with the divine lightning. Had it been anyone else, even a rank 4 or rank 5 beast appraiser from a premium country, they would be at a loss in such a situation. Other than giving up and running away to avoid being implicated, they had no other choice. No matter how strong a person was, they couldn't fight against nature. During the ancient times when immortals were at their peak, some might have been able to do so. But now that immortals were in decline, who would dare to face divine lightning? But Lin Jin was different. Although he had improved tremendously recently and was now considered the best in Jade Dragon City in terms of knowledge, skills, and capabilities, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with a rank 4 beast appraiser even without the museum's help. Even so, he still couldn't withstand this divine lightning. But with the Museum of Deadly Beasts, things would be different. One of the most impressive aspects of the Museum of Deadly Beasts was that it could provide a lot of effective solutions when faced with a desperate situation. For example, Lin Jin had at least 2 ways to deal with the divine lightning. One was to neutralize it while the other was to borrow it. Neutralizing it was simple and straightforward. He could resist the divine lightning and weaken it. This way, Shang-Er would only be injured but not killed. As for the other method of borrowing, it was clearly more brilliant. That was to borrow the power of the divine lightning to strengthen Shang-Er's realm and abilities. Lin Jin made his decision almost immediately. He needed to borrow power. In terms of danger, both methods had a chance of failure. However, the first method didn't bring him any benefit. As long as the second method succeeded, Shang-Er would truly be reborn. Was there a need to be conflicted in this situation? Lin Jin immediately stroked the little fox's head and said, "Shang-Er, someone has placed a divine thunder curse on you and it's too late to get rid of it. However, I have a method that can help you rebirth by borrowing the power of divine lightning. It might even help you condense a Dharma body. But you might have to suffer a little, so you'll have to bear with it." The little fox's eyes lit up and she nodded repeatedly. And so, Lin Jin began his preparations. Xiaohua, Big Yellow, the two of you have strong physique. Later on, help Little Rose share the power of the heavenly lightning. I will cast a spell and think of a way to disperse the heavenly lightning. Lin Jinhe instructed. After all, Lin Jin wasn't sure how strong the divine lightning was. Hence, to be on the safe side, it was best to split the lightning. Lin Jin could only try his best. Even with the Museum of Deadly Beasts solution, there were still many unknowns when it came to actual operations. This was a matter of life and death, so he had to be fully prepared. Xiaohua had a telepathic connection with Lin Jin, so he knew what Lin Jin was going to do. Big Yellow, on the other hand, didn't quite understand. However, Lin Jin wasn't in a hurry. When the time came, he could just have Big Yellow revert to his original form and take over. Again, Lin Jin wasn't worried about Big Yellow at all. He had so many rare beasts by his side, and even Shang and Xiaohua couldn't compare to Big Yellow in terms of talent. Once the Golden Crow's bloodline was activated, even a true dragon would have to kneel before it. Raising his hand, Lin Jin didn't just place a needle on Shang, Xiaohua, and Big Yellow's heads. He even placed one on his own head. Just then, there was a sudden clap of thunder outside. The dimly lit underground cave suddenly turned as bright as day. The light was so bright that it was blinding. Lin Jin reacted quickly and immediately cast a spell. Xiaohua transformed into his wolf form. Big Yellow's reaction was a beat slower, but Lin Jin couldn't be bothered to remind him. After all, Lin Jin trusted Big Yellow's potential. Even if he was struck by lightning, he should be fine. Lin Jin guided the lightning with his needles. In an instant, the bolt split into 4 and struck Lin Jin, Shang, Xiaohua, and Big Yellow. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that this was the first time Lin Jin had ever felt such pain in his life. The pain, the invisible tearing force, and the burning sensation that followed were enough to kill. Fortunately, Lin Jin was strong enough to open the visitation hall's door behind him just in time. Hence, while the lightning bolt hurt, it wasn't enough to kill Lin Jin. Of course, Lin Jin knew that most of the lightning bolts still landed on Shang. Fortunately, Shang had the water reservoir scale on her. With the lightning's power diverted, Shang wouldn't die. Enduring the lightning, Lin Jin gritted his teeth and performed a spell. He used the needles he left in Shang-er's body to open up her meridians. He was using a secret technique from the museum. Beside him, Xiaohua was also using his Dharma body. In his wolf form, he seemed to be able to withstand the lightning strike. Big Yellow, on the other hand, was caught off guard by the lightning. Big Yellow had never encountered something like this before. His first reaction was to flap his wings and flee. Although he was fast and could fly out of the crack, Lin Jin's needles were still hovering above his head. Hence, not long after he flew out, he was struck back by another bolt of lightning. A few of Big Yellow's feathers had fallen off, and some parts of its body were charred black. It looked as pathetic as it could get. Just as he stood up, another bolt struck. In the end, Big Yellow was forced into a corner. His strong desire to live and his anger made him explode. His body expanded several times as flames began to emerge from his body. Unlike Xiaohua, who was in a passive stalemate, when Big Yellow was enraged, there was nothing he wouldn't do. As his body expanded, Big Yellow braced himself against the lightning, spread his wings, and flew toward the rolling thunderclouds. As he flew, he let out a series of strange cries, looking like he was ready to fight to the death. Big Yellow's current form was starting to resemble a golden crow. Covered in flaming feathers, he let out a cry that was louder than the rolling thunder, causing the earth to tremble. Hundreds of meters away, Chen Ryuan, who was hiding in a rundown building, watched this scene with his mouth agape. He was so shocked that he couldn't utter a single word. Inside the deep pit, the rubble on the ceiling had been blown away by the lightning and Big Yellow. However, thanks to the water reservoir scale, the area within a few feet of them was impervious to the rain and the flowing water on the ground. Lin Jin's lightning was the weakest. After all, he didn't have the physique of a beast, so it was hard for him to share the burden. At the same time, he had to free up his hands to perform a spell to control the needles in Shang-er's body. The secret techniques taught by the museum were so profound that even Lin Jin couldn't understand most of them. For example, the pulse-seeking technique was used to trigger the divine lightning. According to a certain order, the needles would pierce the various acupoints in one's body. It was as if the power of the divine lightning was being guided into Shang-er's body through the needles. Chapter 413. Shang-er was currently in excruciating pain. The lightning strike was excruciating enough, and the pain was coming from both inside and out. Needless to say, it was unbearable. The little fox looked pained, but she didn't make a sound as she endured the pain. The heavenly lightning was ferocious and was considered to be the strongest force of nature. It was invincible. However, the more powerful something was, the greater its weakness. For example, the heavenly thunder lacked follow-up power. After a few bolts of lightning, it weakened, and after 2 more, it was so weak that it couldn't be heard anymore. The lightning was initially as thick as a bucket and then as thick as an arm. Now, it was no longer a threat. Goldie, on the other hand, was like a sky-devouring firebird that soared into the clouds, releasing flames in anger. In an instant, the dark clouds were engulfed in flames. It was as if there was a bright sun behind the clouds. Even through the layers of clouds, it illuminated an area of several hundred miles. Even the people in Reed City could feel it. Many citizens woke up in shock and saw the blazing flames above the clouds in the distance. It was said that fire burns clouds, but what they were seeing now was the real deal. Xiao Feigong came out of the Qiao Manor just in time to witness this scene. His eyes were filled with fear, and no one knew what he was thinking. "Father, that looks like..." Xiao Xing said hoarsely. "Mount Long Pass." Xiao Feigong nodded. It wasn't just him. The entire Qiao family was feeling conflicted and anxious. At this moment, a ball of fire exploded in the distance. After a few breaths of time, a loud rumbling sound could be heard. It was obvious that it came from the explosion of fire in the clouds. If they could see and hear it from so far away, one could only imagine how powerful it would be if they were nearby. The people of Reed City and the Qiao family didn't know, but Chen Ryuan felt it up close. After all, Chen Ryuan was a member of Jade Dragon Kingdom's guardian. But now, he was cowering under the dilapidated building, his body trembling. It wasn't just him. The golden bear inside him was trembling as well. Lin Jin let out a long sigh. The most dangerous moment had passed. Even so, he still couldn't move. After all, while Lin Jin had some cultivation and his physique was stronger than average, he still couldn't compare to beasts like Xiaohua and Goldie. He had just taken a portion of the divine lightning and had to use a secret technique to neutralize it for Shang'er. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the pain Lin Jin endured was no less than Shang'er's. It might even be worse. Shang'er was currently sprawled on the ground, unconscious. But Lin Jin knew that he had done everything he could. Shang'er's internal organs had been imbued with lightning energy using a secret technique. How she would use it in the future and how she would improve would depend on her own luck. Xiaohua looked dispirited as well, but his condition was much better than Lin Jin's. After all, Xiaohua had a yin-yang dharma body, so the split lightning couldn't hurt him. As for Goldie, the moment Lin Jin looked up at the raging flames in the night sky, he knew that the guy was fine. He was just in pain from being struck by the divine lightning, so he was venting his anger on the clouds. Big Yellow probably felt that the thunder cloud above their heads was the culprit, so it was not surprising that it was blasting at the moment. Forget it. Lin Jin sat down cross-legged and used his internal vision to check his body. Indeed, he was in terrible shape. Lin Jin had been a little too arrogant, thinking that since he was strong enough to divert some of the divine lightning's power, it shouldn't be a problem. At a glance, Lin Jin's organs were damaged and some of his veins were damaged by the divine lightning. His clothes were tattered and some parts of his skin had large burn marks. Lin Jin looked pretty pathetic right now. Taking out a blood energy pill, Lin Jin swallowed it to slowly nourish his damaged veins. At that moment, the aura behind him surged. The door to the visitation hall appeared out of thin air and hovered there. Lin Jin was stunned. Then, he reacted. He had forgotten that today was the opening day of the visitation hall. After giving it some thought, Lin Jin reached out and closed the visitation hall's door. His current condition wasn't suitable for him to enter the visitation hall. His top priority right now was to treat his injuries and dispel the residual lightning energy in his body. He could go back to the visitation hall next time, so there was no hurry. As for the visitors inside, it was good to let them communicate among themselves. The visitation hall was currently bustling with activity. This time there were no newcomers. Including He Qing, Black Crow, and the others, as well as Feng Ziqian and Zhao Jingyan, there were now 8 people in the visitation hall. Feng Ziqian had brought with him many rare beast materials, which he planned to give to the curator after meeting him. In addition, he had brought along many precious treasures as well. As a member of a premium country's royal family, it wasn't difficult for him to get his hands on these items. As a newcomer, Zhao Jingyan was well prepared as well. In the 7 days since the visitation hall was closed, she had been waiting anxiously. As the commander of Phoenix Palace, Zhao Jingyan had never looked forward to meeting a member of the opposite sex so much. Of course, most importantly, the curator had used his supernatural powers to reconstruct a phoenix egg from its ashes. This egg had become Zhao Jingyan's hope. Although she had her own speculations regarding the term nirvana, she still needed to consult the curator on the specific. Hence, when the visitation hall reopened, she was practically the first to rush in. Filled with excitement and anticipation, she waited for the arrival of the curator. As the other visitors entered, everyone started chatting. Among them, He Qing recounted the feats of the curator's disciple, Appraiser Lin, such as how easily he evolved 5 pet beasts during the Jade Dragon Festival and the Dragon Selection Ceremony. The others listened with great interest. However, they were all waiting for the curator. Hence, after a long time, the curator still hadn't shown up. This time, the crowd couldn't hold back their curiosity any longer. He Qing was the first to speak up. "Why isn't the curator here yet?" With her taking the lead, the others started asking as well. However, it was obvious that no one knew what was going on. Perhaps he was delayed by something. Yiyujo's state of mind was steady. At this time, he said this, although he also felt that it was strange. Following that, the visitors continued chatting. However, they were all talking about the curator being held up by something. The 8 of them came from different parts of the world and had different experiences, so they offered their own opinions. Of course, none of them were worried. They were just curious. To them, there was probably nothing in this world that could trouble the curator, so there was no need to worry about him. However, the more they thought about it, the more curious they became. What could have caused the curator to be late? Did anything special happen in the various states recently? Yiyujo asked. He had been cultivating in Maple City's Friar Association for many years, so he knew a little about the happenings in Jade Dragon Country. If it was outside Jade Dragon Country, he wouldn't know much. Chapter 4:14. He Qing definitely didn't know. She didn't even know about the recent happenings in the royal capital, let alone other places. Jiang Ziki was the same. He had a mild personality and didn't care about other people's business. Besides, he had been hiding in the mountains and forests for the past few years, so he didn't know about the happenings outside. To him, the visitation hall was his biggest social event. Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild were often out and about the recent major events, but they probably had nothing to do with the curator. Old Tian shook his head. He wasn't the type of person to pry around. Although he already had a rank 4 pet beast, Old Tian preferred a small-scale rural lifestyle. To put it bluntly, it was more comfortable to be the king of the mountain and be the king of the mountain. As for Feng Ziqian and Zhao Jingyan, they were equally clueless. As they chatted, a long time had passed. Under normal circumstances, the visitation hall should be closing by now. The 8 visitors stared at each other in disbelief. The curator didn't come. Now that I think about it, that's strange. I don't think there's anything strange about that. The curator never said he would come every time. At this moment, Old Tian said this. It was an unintentional remark, but after he said it, he raised his head and saw everyone looking at him. Old Tian blushed and stammered, "Are you all looking at me? I didn't say anything wrong." The curator really didn't say that he would definitely come back. Everyone thought about it and agreed. Forget the curator, even they were the same. Other than the first time when the visitation hall forcefully sucked them into the rift, they had always walked into the rift on their own. In other words, if they had something to attend to, they could choose not to enter. This was the so-called freedom to come and go. It was just that, out of habit, they would come every time the visitation hall opened. Not to mention, in their hearts, the opening of the visitation hall was a chance to interact with the curator. Every single one of them had benefited from the visitation hall, so no matter what happened, they were never absent. But the curator was different. If the curator had something to attend to, he wouldn't have to come every time. Plus, the curator never guaranteed that. Old Tian, what you said makes sense. Yi Yuzhou was enlightened at this moment. That's right. If curator was busy, he definitely wouldn't be able to make it here. Old Tian, I wouldn't have thought of it if you didn't tell me. Black Crow laughed heartily. The others also nodded at Old Tian, making him even more embarrassed. Looks like I'll have to ask the curator the next time the visitation hall opens. Yes, but we still have some time. We can continue to talk and exchange what we need. Although everyone was disappointed, there was nothing they could do if the curator didn't come. This was especially so for Feng Ziqian and Zhao Jingyan. This was their second time visiting the living room. Originally, they had many questions to ask the curator, but now it seemed like they could only wait a little longer. Of course, they didn't know that the curator was really in trouble at the moment. Due to Big Yellow's fire bombardment, the thunderclouds above were dispersed, and the storm had stopped long ago. As a result, the night sky reappeared. The cool night after the rain was indeed great, be it the air or the scenery. However, Lin Jin wasn't in the mood to appreciate it. He realized that he had underestimated the destructive power of the divine lightning. Initially, Lin Jin planned to imitate Shang'er's secret technique and use it on himself, but he couldn't do it. He wasn't a monster, so he didn't have a strong physique. Monsters also had ranks, but Lin Jin didn't. It was impossible for him to hide the divine lightning in his organs and make it his own. Fortunately, Lin Jin knew that it was impossible, so he didn't continue. He could only settle for the next best thing, which was to guide the divine lightning into a needle. Using the divine lightning and dragon fire to temper this needle, Lin Jin was feeling his way forward, relying on his previous experience. If he succeeded, he would obtain a powerful artifact. But if he failed, he wouldn't lose anything. Lin Jin focused all this while. When he realized that dragon fire wasn't strong enough, he immediately switched to unrefined flames. If unrefined flames didn't work, he took the risk of using phoenix flames, which he was still unfamiliar with. This phoenix flames was obtained when he condensed the phoenix egg. After Lin Jin's nurturing, it had reached a certain level of maturity. Of course, his skills and proficiency in using it were still far from dragonfire's. He had no choice but to use it now. A silver needle hovered in the air before Lin Jin. Bolts of lightning danced erratically on its surface. Lin Jin opened his mouth and blew gently. A crimson flame flew out and wrapped itself around the needle. The flame was blood-red in color. It was the phoenix flames that Lin Jin had been nurturing for a long time. The flame looked more like a tangible liquid as it wrapped itself around the needle. After a while, the lightning still flickered. Lin Jin quickly took out 4 needles and inserted them into the needle. Although I've never refined an artifact before, if I were to use it as a pill, my pelletization skills might work, Lin Jin mumbled to himself. Lin Jin mumbled to himself. It was true that Lin Jin's pelletization skills were remarkable. Back then, it was his excellent pelletization skills and many lost prescriptions that saved the Sure family. Using pelletization skills, Lin Jin formed a ball with phoenix flames and melted the 5 needles into one, forming a large needle. This needle was 3 inches long. Not only was it wrapped in phoenix flames, It also contained lightning bolt. A small portion of the heavenly lightning was finally completely trapped within the large silver needle. This was equivalent to possessing the power of lightning and fire. From now on, this needle shall be called the Thunderfire Needle. By the time he was done, Lin Jin was drenched in sweat and the sky was starting to brighten. Before he knew it, an entire night had passed. Shang'er the little fox was still asleep, while Xiaohua curled up beside her, slowly recovering from the damage inflicted by the divine lightning. Goldie, on the other hand, had been tormented for almost the entire night. Now, he was proudly crowing on a rock. At this, Lin Jin smiled. Goldie had evolved. Before this, Lin Jin had been preparing for Goldie's evolution. Not only did he implant the golden crow's feather into his body, but he also fed him the precious 100-year-old cordyceps. Goldie was already showing signs of evolution, but Lin Jin had been too busy recently, so he didn't have the time to care. Who knew that after being struck by divine lightning, Goldie would go against the trend and evolve on his own. Currently, Big Yellow had also stepped into the 4th rank. Furthermore, this 4th rank was extremely valuable, even surpassing Xiaohua's yin-yang dharma body. This was because after Big Yellow's feathers were blasted off by the heavenly lightning, the feathers that had grown back now looked exactly the same as the golden crow's feathers. This was a good thing. A great thing indeed. Divine lightning had the miraculous effect of cleansing one's body. With the help of divine lightning, Goldie's evolution was even more perfect than a perfect evolution. Even Lin Jin couldn't predict what he would achieve in the future. Perhaps by the time Goldie evolved to rank 5, all of his feathers might turn into golden crow feathers. Then, he might even be reborn and achieve the body of a golden crow. Chapter 4:15. Lin Jin still struggled to get up. Thankfully, the Thunderfire Needle had absorbed the lightning energy from his body. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for Lin Jin to stand up. Speaking of which, he was the one who suffered the heaviest injuries. If it were any other pet beast suffering from a worse injury, Lin Jin would be able to treat it immediately. But the problem was, if it had nothing to do with a pet beast, Lin Jin's abilities and the Museum of Deadly Beasts that he was relying on would be useless. Suddenly, a silhouette hovered above. Lin Jin looked up and asked, "Lord Chen, why haven't you left yet?" The silhouette hovering above was Chen Ryuan. He had been frightened for the entire night. Even when the dark clouds above were forcefully burned away by a giant flaming bird and peace returned, Chen Ryuan didn't dare to wander around. It wasn't that Chen Ryuan was a coward, but he had never experienced something like this before. He only dared to come out when the sun was about to rise. At first, he planned to leave, but after giving it some thought, Chen Ryuan decided to go take a look. If Appraiser Lin needed help, he could lend a hand. As for what Appraiser Lin was doing in the pit, Chen Ryuan had no idea why the thunderclouds were suddenly summoned, causing a thunderstorm and lightning to tear through the sky. He was just curious, which was why he mustered the courage to come here. Upon hearing Lin Jin's voice, Chen Ryuan quickly poked his head out and said, "Appraiser Lin, I was worried about you, so I stayed nearby for the night. Are you alright?" Of course Lin Jin was busy. But it was good that Chen Ryuan was here. "Lord Chen, please come down and lend me a hand." After Lin Jin said that, he waited for a while before Chen Ryuan came down. However, Lin Jin could tell that the latter was very cautious as he looked around with a frightened expression. It wasn't that Chen Ryuan was ignorant, but after what he had experienced last night, the situation in the pit was simply too terrifying. Due to the lightning strike, many boulders nearby were charred black, while some had even melted. It was a bizarre sight. The boulder above Lin Jin's head was long gone, replaced by a bowl-sized pit. Judging from the traces around, this was where the lightning struck. Chen Ryuan jumped down and saluted Lin Jin. Lin Jin said, "Lord Chen, please help me up." Chen Ryuan took a closer look and noticed that Lin Jin was covered in burns and looked rather pathetic. However, He dared not ask about it as this had nothing to do with his status. If Chun Ryuen were in Appraiser Lin's shoes, he would have been dead by now. The fact that Appraiser Lin was still alive proved that he was much stronger than Chun Ryuen. Respecting the strong was a basic principle of life. Lin Jin stood still and said, "Lord Shin, could you please bring a message back to Maple City for me?" Chun Ryuen hurriedly nodded. Lin Jin explained. He had rushed here in a hurry, but fortunately, he wasn't too late and managed to save Shang. However, White Ape's status was still unknown and his whereabouts were unknown. Lin Jin had to search for him. In that case, Maple City would have to make some arrangements. Not only did he have to inform his family, but Maple City's Beast Appraisal Association as well. After all, Lin Jin was the chief, so he couldn't just disappear without a word. Moreover, who knew how long it would take to find White Ape, so Lin Jin had to make arrangements. Chun Ryuen made a mental note of this. "Don't worry, Appraiser Lin. I'll head to Maple City now. I can visit an old friend there." Lin Jin nodded without asking who Chun Ryuen was going to visit. "Thank you, Lord Shin." Lin Jin saluted. Without further ado, Chun Ryuen bid Lin Jin farewell and flew away. Lin Jin stayed where he was to regulate his breathing. Only when it was noon and the sun was high up in the sky did he recover a little. At least he could get up and walk again. Xiaohua was fine and Goldie was even more spirited. Shang'er, on the other hand, was still in her fox form, curled into a ball and sleeping. Lin Jin picked her up and caressed her soft fur. He knew that Shang'er was unconscious because she was going through a metamorphosis. This metamorphosis was significant to her, and if everything went well, Shang'er's realm might even improve by leaps and bounds. Looking around the deep pit, Lin Jin called out to Xiaohua and the latter immediately transformed into his giant wolf form. Lin Jin grabbed Xiaohua's flame-like fur and flipped himself onto his back. Xiaohua leaped up and jumped out of the pit. Although Lin Jin had never met Daluo Temple's rector before, this deep pit and the remnants of the Thunder Seal spell were enough to gauge the man's strength. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the rector was extremely powerful. If Lin Jin hadn't arrived in time, Shang'er would have died to the lightning strike. If he wasn't mistaken, the rector must have a rank 5 pet beast or an equivalent strength. But no matter how powerful the rector was, Lin Jin wasn't going to let this matter rest. One day later, in the morning, Grassy Continent, Cloud Tower City. This was the border between Grassy Continent and Southern Continent. Although it belonged to Grassy Continent, the people in the city were mostly people of the Central Plains. Of course, there were many tall Grassy Continent natives as well. The city was bustling with merchants and merchants. Cloud Tower City didn't belong to any country in Grassy Continent. Because of its proximity to Daluo Temple, no country could claim Cloud Tower City as their territory. Forget Cloud Tower City, the 4 major cities around Daluo Temple had their own way of doing things. Of course, they were all protected by Daluo Temple for their safety. Similarly, no one dared to occupy the 1,000-mile radius around Daluo Temple. It was a testament to how powerful Daluo Temple's 1,000-year heritage was. Aside from that, most of the people here were Buddhist believers. They could even treat Daluo Temple as a Buddhist kingdom. Inside an inn in Cloud Tower City, Lin Jin carried the unconscious Shang'er in his arms as he looked out the window at a mountain in the distance. That mountain was called Daluo Peak, and Daluo Temple was located at the peak. White Ape was missing and Lin Jin figured he must have been captured by Daluo Temple's monk. Hence, coming to Daluo Temple to demand his return was the right choice. The problem was, how was he going to get White Ape back? For the past day, Lin Jin had been recuperating while gathering information about Daluo Temple. Daluo Temple's image in the hearts of the locals was quite positive. Helping the weak, upholding justice, and subduing demons, it was only natural for people to follow them. Lin Jin heard that many people had migrated here from other states just to live in Daluo Temple's territory. This was a form of prestige. Prestige wasn't something that could be built up overnight. Take Daluo Temple for example, it took them 1,000 years to reach their current prosperity. To Lin Jin, this was a troublesome matter. His opponent was too strong, 1,000 times stronger than any opponent Lin Jin had faced before. Although Lin Jin was angry, he wasn't so impulsive that he would barge into the temple and challenge them. If that was the case, unless he had a rank 6 pet beast in his possession, he could forget about it. However, time waited for no man. While Shonger could wait for justice, White Ape couldn't wait any longer. Based on Lin Jin's understanding, Daluo Temple had always flaunted righteousness and took purging demons as their mission. Regular demons would never end well in Daluo Temple's hands. Based on the time since White Ape was captured, 3 days had passed. How could Lin Jin not panic when he didn't even know if White Ape was still alive? Of course, Lin Jin actually had another option. He could give up, admit defeat and leave, pretending that nothing had happened. That way, he wouldn't have to risk his life, and he wouldn't have to go against this 1,000-year-old temple. But Lin Jin couldn't do it. In this world, there was bound to be a bottom line. Coincidentally, this was Lin Jin's bottom line, and he wouldn't back down even half a step. Hence, in a situation like this, strategy and tactics were crucial. Chapter 4:16. After much consideration, Lin Jin decided not to go with his original identity. If he wanted Daluo Temple to take him seriously or even be wary of him, it would be best if he adopted a different identity. Curator's identity was just right. It wasn't that Lin Jin was boasting, but Curator's name had gained some notoriety among the villainous community. After all, his actions against Grassy Continent's Snake Country had spread like wildfire among the villainous experts. Of course, this was only part of the reason. Another reason was that if he were to make a move this time, it would be inappropriate for him to use his original identity. Curator could still find him. Moreover, he might even implicate Jade Dragon Kingdom and Maple City. But if he used his Curator identity, things would be different. Other than himself, no one would know about this Curator. Once he rescued White Ape, he would escape and the people of Daluo Temple could look for him wherever they wanted. Either way, he would have a way out. After some careful planning, Lin Jin got himself a mask and personally drew a pattern similar to the one on the Curator's mask in the visitation hall. He had to change his clothes too. Once he was done, Lin Jin put on his mask, carried Shonger in her fox form, and headed for Daluo Temple with Goldie in tow. Lin Jin could think of a way to get Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild to help, but he didn't have enough time. Moreover, Daluo Temple was far more powerful than an intermediate country like Grassy Continent's Snake Country. Lin Jin could just open the visitation hall and hide inside, but it would be troublesome if he brought others along. More importantly, Lin Jin was no longer the same person he used to be. His strength had far surpassed Black Crow and Madame Ghostchild, so if he couldn't handle this, calling others over would only drag them down. He had to deal with his own problems. After a day of rest, Lin Jin was back to his peak condition. It was early in the morning, so there weren't many visitors and believers heading for Daluo Temple. The mountain path was quiet. Admittedly, there was a reason why a 1,000-year-old temple was chosen. Not only was Daluo Peak beautiful, but the terrain was also perfect with a pleasant climate. Because he was wearing a mask, carrying a fox, and followed by a large rooster. No matter where he went, his appearance was rather eye-catching. Hence, although there weren't many people on the mountain path, they all turned to look at him. Some even whispered to each other and pointed at him. Ignoring them, Lin Jin followed the winding stone steps up to the top of the mountain. The 1,000-year-old ancient temple truly lived up to its name. Just this mountain gate alone was extraordinary. At this moment, more than 10 young monks were sweeping the ground and splashing water in front of the wide mountain gate. It looked very clean. Lin Jin took a deep breath. carrying Shonger with his left arm, he extended his right hand and pressed down. To put it bluntly, Lin Jin was here to punish them, so there was no need to be polite. Moreover, he had to make Daluo Temple wary and take him seriously. He had to make them understand that they were messing with a formidable opponent. Hence, Lin Jin had to use his strongest attack. He had to exert his dominance and make Daluo Temple wary. But at the same time, he couldn't hurt the other party, and he couldn't force the other party to make a move. Therefore, he had to know his limit. Lin Jin pushed his beast deterrence ability to its limit. In an instant, he even opened the visitation hall's door behind him to augment his aura. The moment Lin Jin pressed his hand down, an invisible force enveloped the entire Daluo Peak. The monks of Daluo Temple had pet beasts too. In an instant, almost all the pet beasts in the temple trembled and knelt in submission. No matter how their masters called out to them, these pet beasts didn't dare to move. It was as if they were being forcefully pressed to the ground by an invisible force. It wasn't just inside the temple. Outside the temple, as if someone had pressed the pause button, the chirping of insects and chirping of birds fell silent. It was a strange feeling. The monks sweeping the ground immediately noticed it and were at a loss for what to do. As a 1,000-year-old temple, Daluo Temple had its own expert. Upon seeing this, they immediately knew that an expert had cast a spell and was doing this on purpose. There was chaos in the temple at first, but it soon calmed down. Lin Jin didn't have to wait for long before he saw many monks coming out of the temple. The one leading them was a benevolent-looking old monk. The old monk's robes were simple and his kasaya wasn't glowing either. However, there was an indescribable aura around him. From what Lin Jin could see, the old monk was wearing a 9-beaded bracelet that seemed to carry an aura of power. Other than that, the old monk must have cultivated the Beastmaster scroll to a high level. The monks behind the old monk weren't average people either. At this, the monk sweeping the floor by the door, who was in a daze, quickly bowed and addressed him as Master Abbot. An abbot was a room of 10 square feet. He was the monk with the highest status in the temple and could be considered the leader. When Lin Jin heard him address him as abbot, he knew that his strategy had worked. He had unleashed a powerful attack right from the start, but he did not harm anyone, only intimidating the beasts. The higher one's cultivation base, and the more knowledgeable one was, the more they would know how amazing this attack of his was, so they would definitely not dare to take it lightly. The fact that the abbot had shown up was proof enough. Lin Jin had established his dominance without shedding all pretenses of cordiality. His goal had been achieved. Lin Jin retracted his hand and gently stroked the fox's fur. With his mask on, he exuded a mysterious aura. On the other hand, Goldie, who was chomping away at bugs beside him, was a bit of a killjoy. However, this uncoordinated combination only made it more difficult to fathom. "Sir, may I know what brings you to our Daluo Temple?" The abbot's voice was loud and dignified. Lin Jin didn't answer him. Instead, he stroked the little fox in his arms and said, "Daluo Temple has been around for thousands of years. Of course, we have a deep foundation. Master Abbot, you must be an accomplished monk as well. May I ask, what do you see in my arms?" Lin Jin asked in return. This was Lin Jin's strategy. Who cared what they were doing? They had to follow Lin Jin's lead. Otherwise, it would have been pointless to expend so much spirit energy to create such an intimidating presence. This time, Lin Jin was going to judge Daluo Temple in a superior manner. The abbot was stunned by Lin Jin's question. As Daluo Temple's abbot, his judgment wasn't something an average person could compare to. Although monks didn't care much for the title of beast appraiser, part of what they learned was actually beast appraisers. Hence, the abbot could tell from the beginning that the creature in the man's arms was a mature fox spirit. However, it seemed to be in a deep slumber due to its injuries. When he thought about how the man didn't seem friendly and was carrying an injured fox spirit, it seemed like he was here to interrogate them. After all, Daluo Temple rarely had anyone dared to come here to interrogate them. While there had been cases in the past few centuries, this man was the first one in the past century. The abbot was able to become an abbot not only because of his high cultivation, wide knowledge, and experience, but also because he was able to keep his composure. Having a bad-tempered monk behind him was already irritating. Chapter 4:17. After all, things had been too smooth for Daluo Temple for the past 100 years. Not only had they reached the peak of their development, but no one dared to go head-on against Daluo Temple, and no one dared to criticize them either. Even the most powerful countries treated Daluo Temple with the utmost respect. Because of this, the monks of Daluo Temple developed an arrogant temperament. They couldn't stand others criticizing them. Not to mention talking about their faults, even the slightest bit of disrespect towards them would make them angry. However, with the abbot around, they dared not do anything. The abbot smiled. "Sir, if I'm not mistaken, the creature in your arms is a fox spirit." "You have a good eye, Master Abbot," Lin Jin said in a deep voice. Then, he asked, "May I know who is the rector of your exorcism hall?" The sudden change of topic caused many people to not be able to react in time. Those who did react all furrowed their brows. They were already certain that this person was here to cause trouble. "Master Abbot, this person doesn't seem friendly. Why should we be nice to him?" a monk said angrily. Before he could finish, the abbot raised a hand to stop him. "The rector of Exorcism Hall is my junior, Juzhen. He returned to the temple a few days ago, and is currently recuperating. I know that you are an expert, so please state your purpose in coming here. There's no need to beat around the bush." It was obvious that the abbot didn't want to beat around the bush. Lin Jin said nothing. However, the invisible pressure he was exerting was even more intense. After a long while, Lin Jin broke the silence. "There's a wealthy family called the Qiao family in Reed City of Jade Dragon Kingdom. They have an ancestral heirloom, and the Qiao family has always behaved according to the rules. However, they were targeted by villains." Lin Jin was recounting the entire story of the incident. Lin Jin only picked out the main points and explained the situation in a few words. "You can call me curator. You can call me curator. The fox demon in your arms is my grand disciple. My other grand disciple is a white ape demon. Even though they are demons, they practice righteousness and have never harmed anyone. The reason they went to the Qiao family was to defend against thieves and protect the people. I never thought that they would be harmed by the eminent monks of Daluo Temple. If I hadn't arrived in time, this grand disciple of mine would have died under the heavenly thunder curse of Daluo Temple. My disciple is also injured and is currently recuperating. So, Master Abbot, what is the purpose of my visit to Daluo Temple?" Lin Jin spoke slowly, and at the end, he enunciated each word clearly. Not only were Lin Jin and the monks present here, but there were also many worshippers watching from afar. Lin Jin's voice was loud and sincere. The monks of Daluo Temple were stunned. If what this self-proclaimed curator said was true, then Daluo Temple was indeed taking the side of the wicked. Moreover, they had clearly heard the heavenly thunder curse just now. Even though the curator did not explain how he dispelled it, there was no doubt that his methods were extraordinary. After all, the heavenly thunder curse was extremely rare even in Daluo Temple. It was impossible for them to dispel it, at least in their eyes. The abbot was frowning. He was a veteran. The others might not understand the lethality of this curator, but he did. The other party was accusing Daluo Temple of wrongdoing. "Curator, based on what you've said, the cultivators of Daluo Temple have been accused of not caring about right and wrong and taking the side of the wicked. If that's the case, then Daluo Temple is indeed in the wrong. But these are only your words, there's no proof. Since you've come here alone, you must have something to rely on. However, Daluo Temple isn't a place to be slandered. Curator, even if you're an expert, you have to explain yourself or I won't let you pass. The abbot's aura surged. The monks behind him were already annoyed. Now that they heard the man's words and how he was slandering the reputation of their 1,000-year-old temple, they couldn't hold it in any longer. You demon, the abbot has a good temper and will not be calculative with you. However, I will not allow you to spout nonsense here. You have the fox demon with you, so you must be up to no good. I will take you down first, then I will kill you to restore the peace of Daluo Temple. Having said that, the hot-tempered monk leaped out. His arms were bare, and there was a lion and tiger tattoo on his shoulder and chest. There was a faint roar of a lion and tiger on the tattoo. Ji Zhang, don't. Although the abbot tried to stop him, he was just saying it. He didn't actually make a move. It was obvious that the other party had a tacit understanding and was just putting on a show. Knowing that this curator didn't come with good intentions, it was better to test his strength first. Even though the pressure was strong, it was probably due to the help of some kind of ritual implement. The monk named Ji Zhang was tall and strong with thick eyebrows and angry eyes. He looked just like the angry guardian Vajra painted on the walls of Buddhist sections. Right now, he was holding a sun and moon scepter, ready to strike. Lin Jin knew the other party would test him, and sure enough, he did. In an instant, Lin Jin observed the lion and tiger tattoo on the monk's body with his beast appraisal skills and determined that this was a liger beast. Ligers were native to Nanjiang and were large in size and unusually ferocious. This monk had fused the Beastmaster's second scroll into his body, which was how he gained such tyrannical strength. It was easy for Lin Jin to defeat him, but how to win in order to further intimidate the other party was a different matter altogether. It would be best if Lin Jin could shatter the other party's ambition and fighting spirit in one fell swoop. By doing so, Lin Jin could make an example out of him so that the others in Daluo Temple wouldn't dare to act recklessly. Lin Jin wanted a one-on-one battle like this. If they all came at him at the same time, he would be in trouble. Lin Jin was well-versed in the Beastmaster scroll. After all, he had learned the 4 most powerful scrolls. He was familiar with the second scroll as well. If he could instantly break through the other party's Beastmaster scroll, he should be able to do it. As his thoughts raced, the monk's sun and moon scepter was already flying toward him. Lin Jin raised a finger. A silver needle flew out, piercing through the monk's shoulder at lightning speed. Break! With a soft cry, it seemed like a light tap of his finger. But when it landed on Ji Zhang, an incredible force erupted. With a loud bang, Ji Zhang's Beastmaster second scroll was instantly broken. It was as if someone had stripped him naked. Almost at the same time, a huge liger beast emerged from the other party's body. Monk Ji Zhang felt as if 90% of his strength had been sucked out of him in an instant. He could no longer hold on to the extremely heavy sun and moon scepter, and it slipped out of his hands. His body also turned numb from the piercing of the silver needles, causing him to fall stiffly to the ground. As for the liger beast that had escaped, it was now subservient to Lin Jin, not daring to act recklessly. It was simple, almost effortless. Before Daluo Temple could even unleash his might, Ji Zhang of Daluo Temple had been defeated. And it was such a thorough and humiliating defeat. The monks of Daluo Temple were in an uproar. Some of the monks were about to step forward when Lin Jin called for Goldie. Goldie immediately flapped his wings and transformed into a giant firebird to block the monks. Chapter 4:18. Although Goldie was still far from reaching the level of a real golden crow, it was already a prototype. In addition, Goldie was already on the verge of evolution. After being stimulated by the divine lightning, he broke through to rank 4. Goldie now had no one to form a blood pact with, and he wasn't a monster either. Instead, he had the bloodline of a true golden crow. Despite being only rank 4, His true strength was on par with a rank 5. That was why Lin Jin had the confidence to come to Daluo Temple. Daluo Temple's monks stopped in their tracks in fear. When they saw the rooster earlier, they could tell that it was no ordinary rooster, but they didn't expect it to be this powerful. Buddha's light of wisdom, deity capturing guardian. The abbot wore a solemn expression. In the next instant, a brilliant ray of light shot out from the prayer beads in his hand. Following that, a thunderous drumming sounded and the ground was covered in fog. When the fog dissipated, an armored guardian beast with the body of an eagle and the body of a human appeared. It was about 3 feet tall and wielded 2 golden hammers. This guardian beast belonged to the Buddhist sect and was said to be a ferocious beast that was enlightened by Buddha. Not only was the eagle-headed guardian huge, but it was also clad in golden armor and wielded a war hammer. There was even a golden crown on its head. Lin Jin's eyelids twitched under his mask. Daluo Temple was truly something else. Curator, you should leave. Daluo Temple will not hold this against you. The abbot performed a Buddhist salute on the stairs. Lin Jin smirked. Now was not the time to cower, nor could he back down. From the moment the monk made his move to the moment the abbot summoned this guardian beast with a secret Buddhist spell, neither side had truly fallen out with the other. They were just trying to increase the stakes for their side. Just like how before 2 countries went to war, they had to set up a battle formation. Although the battle hadn't started yet, this was the most important battle. It was a battle to see who had the most trump cards and who would cower first. Lin Jin was sure that Daluo Temple was filled with experts. If he were to fight them openly, forget rescuing White Ape, he might even lose his life here. However, if it was just a show of force, he could continue to increase the stakes. His purpose was very simple. He wanted to show his strength so that the other party would not dare to really fight. It was a bit like a nuclear deterrent. Daluo Temple doesn't care about good or evil. They kill demons whenever they see them. Yet, they claim to be enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. Instead, they turn a blind eye to evil. Let me ask you, how is this enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens? It's not easy for monsters to cultivate, and there are also those who do good deeds. However, these things are not worthy of the attention of the eminent monks of Daluo Temple. I really don't understand. Your 1,000-year-old temple has thousands of monks chanting sutras all day long. Did your Buddha tell you all these? Lin Jin was already fuming with anger. Now that he had cast a spell to enhance his voice, it reverberated throughout Daluo Peak. Any monk in the temple would be able to hear it. Impudent and savage. The abbot was also angry. These words were like a slap to the face in front of everyone. How could he tolerate it? The monks were glaring at Lin Jin as well, seemingly ready to attack him. Some people had already begun to find reasons to accuse them. Audacious thief, you covered your face and brought a demonic beast with you. You must be an evil person. Master Abbot, please allow us to attack together. Let's kill this evil and restore peace to our Buddhist sect. The monks were agitated and it seemed like they couldn't hold it in any longer. Suddenly, Lin Jin took out a talisman. This was the edict talisman Lin Jin wrote in Cloud Tower City this morning. Previously, Lin Jin had used the Divine Mountain Edict to suppress the Western King Cobra. This time, Lin Jin wrote the Vulcan Edict. The entire 5 Elements Edict was something Lin Jin learned from Cloud Sect's Wu Qian back at Jade Dragon City. Learning wasn't exactly the right word. Wu Qian's research and understanding of the 5 Elements Edict paled in comparison to Lin Jin's. Wu Qian basically gave Lin Jin a primer. Back then, he used the Divine Mountain Edict to congeal a mountain to seal a monster. It was so powerful that it shook the heavens. Today, Lin Jin was going to use a higher-level Vulcan Edict. He was going to show off his nuclear weapon and see if Daluo Temple was brave enough to face him head-on. However, this Vulcan Edict was much stronger than the Divine Mountain Edict. Hence, Lin Jin couldn't cast it with his own strength. Fortunately, Lin Jin had studied this edict on his way here. He only needed a powerful fire guide, and he had a 70% chance of casting it. Xiaohua couldn't do it. He had to provide Lin Jin with mana, so he could only turn to Goldie. "Goldie!" Lin Jin shouted. Goldie immediately chirped and spread his wings to soar above Daluo Temple. Lin Jin tossed the fire talisman in his hand out and invoked the Vulcan Edict. Edict, Vulcan Edict. The fire talisman flew out and attached itself to Goldie's body. Then, in his firebird form, the flames on Goldie's body burst into flames as if hundreds of barrels of kerosene had been poured on it. In the blink of an eye, the fireball was like a blazing sun descending upon the world. A gigantic fireball hovered above Daluo Temple's head. Despite the distance, the monks below could already feel the unbearable heat. As for the pilgrims and commoners, they had already scattered in fear. Confused, some cried out, "What a sin! The sun is setting." The entire Daluo Temple was in an uproar. Whether it was those who were meditating, praying to Buddha, or chanting in seclusion, no one could remain calm. There were eminent monks who could remain unfazed even in the face of a landslide. But in this situation, no matter how high their cultivation level was, they couldn't help but panic. Anyone who wasn't an idiot could tell that once this gigantic fireball fell, the 1,000-year-old Daluo Temple would be destroyed in an instant. Perhaps some monks with high cultivation levels could survive, but Daluo Temple would definitely not be able to survive. Hence, when he saw the curator unleashing his ultimate move, the arrogant and composed abbot could no longer keep his cool. "Curator, please wait. Don't be rash. Let's talk this through." It wasn't just the abbot, even the monks who were clamoring for a fight earlier were terrified. Although they wanted nothing more than to tear this curator apart, they didn't dare to. Once he unleashed his spell, Daluo Temple would be gone. Of course, Lin Jin wouldn't actually destroy Daluo Temple. He did have this thought before. If Shang-Er and White Ape were to die, Daluo Temple would have to suffer the wrath of the Vulcan mantra. But Shang-Er was fine now and her condition was improving. So as long as White Ape was still alive, there was no need for him to do this. After all, once the Vulcan mantra was unleashed, he and Daluo Temple would have to fight to the death. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't take this path. The other monks no longer dared to act recklessly. Even the abbot was nervous. Although he was gnashing his teeth in anger, there was nothing he could do. Come to think of it, this curator was quite a powerful man. Up until now, he had only attacked 3 times. The first time, he knocked on the door and suppressed all the pet beasts in Daluo Temple with a terrifying aura. The second time, he attacked Monk Zhizhang. Again, he lifted his finger and broke Zhizhang's Beastmaster scroll. The third time, he summoned a gigantic fireball that hovered above their head. If anything went wrong today, Daluo Temple might face its biggest calamity in 1,000 years. Chapter 419. The abbot was a smart man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have reached his current position. With a wave of his hand, the golden-crowned eagle took a few steps back. Not daring to threaten Lin Jin, he said, "Don't be angry, curator. Let's talk this out." Lin Jin smirked inwardly. "If I didn't use this Vulcan spell, you guys would have ganged up on me by now. Talk this out? Pfft." However, Lin Jin couldn't possibly fight to the death, so he smirked. "Master Abbot, what advice do you have for me?" "I wouldn't dare to say advice, but curator must be an expert from a Taoist school. That edict was truly amazing. I'm truly impressed." The abbot first complimented him and even changed the way he addressed him. The way he addressed him as this old monk was a sign of weakness. Then, he said, "This old monk's knowledge of what you've just said is limited. Why don't you wait for a moment, curator? This old monk will send someone over to our temple's exorcist hall's rector hall for him to explain." things would have ended long ago. Lin Jin grumbled inwardly. I'll be troubling you then, Master Abbot. Lin Jin was now forcing Daluo Temple to negotiate. He wanted them to release White Ape and offer an apology. As long as he achieved his goal, everything would be fine. Now that the initiative was in Lin Jin's hands, as long as Daluo Temple was wary of this 1,000-year-old temple, they wouldn't choose to fight Lin Jin to the death. Since they couldn't fight to the death, they could only give in. Of course, Lin Jin had to be careful not to push them too far. Otherwise, they would lose everything. Soon, the rector of Exorcism Hall, Zhu Zhen, arrived. He didn't look too well due to the sword wound he sustained and had been recuperating for the past 2 days. Following the Exorcist Hall's chief seat was a middle-aged monk with a smile on his face. He had an extraordinary bearing. The surrounding monks all looked nervous. After all, there was a blazing ball of fire hovering above their heads. The heat was so intense that they couldn't even stand it. Some of the hay in the monastery was already smoking, and if they continued to roast it for a while longer, it would probably start burning. There were already monks running around with buckets of water. The moment the rector arrived, his pupils dilated in disbelief at the sight of the little fox in Lin Jin's arms. He obviously recognized her. Junior brother Zhu Zhen, this is Curator. He came to Daluo Temple because... The abbot gave a brief summary of what happened. Junior brother Zhu Zhen, you have to tell us the truth. Monk Zhu Zhen was obviously dissatisfied, but the blazing sun above his head was no joke. He suppressed his anger and said, that day, my 2 disciples, Jin Yan and Ji Yin, and I were passing through Mount Long Pass when a few people blocked our way. They said that there was a demon wreaking havoc in the nearby Reed City, and they asked us to subdue the demon. I asked my disciple, Ji Yin, to handle the matter. While waiting for him to return, I sensed that the demonic aura in Mount Long Pass was very thick. I went out to take a look and saw the demon fox attacking someone. We, the monks of Daluo Temple, could not sit back and do nothing. That was why we had to subdue the demon. Upon hearing Zhu Zhen's words, Lin Jin could guess what had happened. Master Zhu Zhen, has it ever occurred to you that the villain was the one who called the shots? That the villain was using you? Lin Jin asked before explaining what happened to the Qiao family. Those people are the remnants of the Demonic Appraisal Association. They've been hiding in Reed City with malicious intentions, waiting for an opportunity to steal the Qiao family's heirloom. The masters of Daluo Temple happened to be passing by, so they became the weapons of these demonic appraisers. Lin Jin finally understood the situation. He was furious because he suspected that Daluo Temple was in cahoots with the Demonic Appraisal Association. But now, it seemed like that wasn't the case. However, this monk Zhu Zhen didn't care about the facts and claimed that the monster he encountered was an evil monster. That in itself wasn't right. It was too prejudiced. After saying this, the monks all had different expressions on their faces. Most of them came to a realization. If that's the case, then this is all a misunderstanding. Daluo Temple has always been famous for slaying monsters. Those Demonic Appraisal Association scoundrels knew about this, and that's why they used this trick to sow discord and get someone else to do their dirty work. The abbot was a smart man. Once he saw a way out, he immediately stepped down without hesitation. Although it was a little embarrassing, there was no other way. They couldn't really fight to the death with this curator, could they? More importantly, this curator was too powerful. If Daluo Temple were to fight him head-on, both sides would suffer. Regardless of the outcome, the 1,000-year-old temple and its many halls would be destroyed. With the blazing sun hanging over their heads, they couldn't withstand it. Even if they used Wisdom King's golden crest, they might not be able to withstand it. Moreover, they didn't have the time to cast it. With Lin Jin's keen eyes, how could he not tell that the rector of exorcism was also heavily injured? If he was right, he must have been ambushed by Shang'er's object manipulation. Monk Zhujian's physical body hadn't reached the state of being indestructible, so even if he could be healed in the future, his lifespan would be shortened and it would be difficult for him to improve his cultivation. In comparison, although Shang'er's injuries were more serious, with Lin Jin's care, she would definitely be reborn in the future and her strength would increase once again. Hence, they were on par. Lin Jin had initially planned to cripple this old monk, but now, it seemed like he was no different from being crippled. At this, Lin Jin responded in a friendly manner, "Master Abbot, you're right. There's nothing wrong with getting rid of evil and bringing peace to the people, but not all monsters are evil. Masters of Daluo Temple, I hope that in the future, you can investigate more of these monsters. If you ever come across a monster that is wholeheartedly devoted to cultivation, please be magnanimous. Don't kill them all just for the sake of purging evil." He was basically teaching the monks of Daluo Temple a lesson. After all, these monks usually stood on the moral and intellectual high ground to judge others, teach them a lesson, and enlighten them. Now that they were being taught a lesson, it was needless to say how aggrieved they felt. But the problem was, they had to listen obediently. After all, the atmosphere had calmed down and it would be unwise to incite another conflict. Moreover, even if they wanted to, Master Abbot wouldn't allow it. Fine, they just had to listen obediently. "Master Zhujian, since it was all a misunderstanding, I won't pursue the matter any further. Release my grand disciple, White Ape, and I'll dismiss the edict and leave the mountain," Lin Jin said. However, Exorcism Hall's rector, Zhujian, frowned and shook his head. "That disciple of mine, Jiyin, hasn't returned to the temple since we parted ways at Mount Long Pass. Naturally, White Ape isn't in Daluo Temple either." "What?" Lin Jin was shocked. His first reaction was that the monk was lying. Lin Jin's aura flared up. He even suspected that the monks had already killed White Ape and couldn't hand him over, hence why they were saying this. In an instant, the atmosphere tensed up again. According to the Qiao family, it was monks from Daluo Temple who came to provoke us. Afraid of harming innocent people, White Ape left the city to fight and disappeared after that. He only left some traces of destruction in a remote area outside the city. Now that White Ape hasn't returned after so long, he must have either been captured by Daluo Temple or killed by you, am I right? Lin Jin's voice was cold. If these monks really killed White Ape without reason, Lin Jin would still fight to the death with Daluo Temple. Chapter 420. Lin Jin cherished his wings, especially those around him. Be it monsters or beasts, Lin Jin would never allow anyone to bully or kill them. If anyone provoked Lin Jin, he would fight to the death. Just like now. Lin Jin panicked when Daluo Temple refused to hand over White Ape. The blazing fireball above his head grew increasingly ear-piercing as the flames danced. Monks with low cultivation levels were sweating profusely as the heat reached its peak. Boom! Not far away, the top of a withered tree burst into flames. Black smoke billowed from many places inside Daluo Temple as well. Everyone was in a frenzy as they yelled for the fire to be extinguished. Curator, although Junior Zhujian has a strong personality, he never lies. It's true that Jiyin hasn't returned to the temple, the abbot said. He knew a little about this, but it was common for monks to leave the temple for a month or two, so no one thought much of it. Humph, maybe Senior Jiyin was injured by the White Ape monster and that's why he couldn't return. A young monk couldn't help but shout from behind. The monk's eyes lit up, musing that this was a possibility. After all, Jiyin wasn't out on a vacation but to deal with a monster. If he succeeded, whether he killed the monster or captured it, he would definitely return. But for him to not return for the past few days was very unusual in itself. Zhujian's expression changed, thinking that this was a possibility. What if Jiyin had fallen to the White Ape monster? Thinking deeper, this curator might have known that the white ape was the one who harmed Ji-in but came here to make a false accusation, trying to blackmail Daluo Temple. That was possible. If Zhu Jin could think of this, how could the abbot not? In an instant, the Daluo Temple monk's expressions darkened. Curator, it's true that our monk Ji-in hasn't returned. This is very unusual, so he might have been harmed instead. Curator, it's unreasonable and unwise for you to be so overbearing. If we go by your logic, Daluo Temple can ask you for Ji-in as well. The abbot knew he had to be firm or else Daluo Temple's reputation would be ruined. Moreover, they were in the right. If they were to investigate this matter carefully, it might be possible that this curator was putting on an act. Lin Jin refused to believe it. He knew White Ape very well. If White Ape killed Ji-in, he would definitely come to help Shonger or continue to wait in Reed City. There was no way he would disappear without a trace. Lin Jin was 100% sure of this. Having been with him for such a long time, Lin Jin was familiar with White Ape's personality. He wouldn't disappear for no reason. On the other hand, Daluo Temple might have killed White Ape and could not hand him over, which was why they were putting the blame on him. Daluo Temple, do you really think that I wouldn't dare to destroy your ancient temple? Lin Jin pressed his hand down and the fireball above his head descended by 10 feet, its scorching heat descending upon them. 4 guardians, heavenly Buddha's seal. On the other side, the abbot saw that things were not going well and hurriedly used a Buddhist technique. The Buddhist beads in his hand all exploded. At the same time, 3 streams of light flew out. Together with the eagle beasts from before, there were 3 more divine beasts protecting the Dharma. Some of them were draped in silver armor and golden helmets, and some were wearing golden monk robes. It could be said that they were incomparably dignified and solemn. The 4 divine beasts were the golden-crowned eagle, the iron-armed black bear, the sky dragon, and the black tortoise emissary. The 4 divine beasts attacked at the same time. 3 of them worked together to create a golden canopy to block the Vulcan edict while the last one charged at the curator. The abbot's attack was as powerful as a thunderbolt. Moreover, each of the 4 guardians was an existence that surpassed rank 4. To put it bluntly, they were rank 5 beasts, the kind that possessed magical powers. The abbot clearly had Daluo Temple's strongest combat power in hand. Besides the abbot, Exorcist Hall's rector, Monk Zhu Jin, didn't want to be outdone either. He took off the Buddhist beads around his neck and cast a spell as well. Convert all beasts, Buddha's light illuminates the world, Prajna heaven, demon slayer sword. In an instant, an ethereal sword of light materialized and slashed at Lin Jin. 2 of Daluo Temple's experts attacked at the same time. Lin Jin was enraged. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't just passively take a beating. Not only did he raise his hand and release the Vulcan edict, but he also raised a finger to release the Thunder Fire Needle he had refined earlier. Using the Thunder Fire Needle, he faced the incoming golden-crowned eagle. There was a deafening explosion. The stone floor in front of Daluo Temple cracked horizontally. The surrounding pine trees were instantly struck by the Thunder Fire Needle, turning into ashes. The Thunder Fire Needle unleashed its immense power, blocking the golden-crowned eagle's ambush. Not only that, but Lin Jin had also condensed his Heaven's Path sword intent. Using his finger as a sword, he shouted, "Slash!" Exorcist Hall's rector, Monk Zhu Jin's, materialized sword of light shattered. At the same time, his eyes widened in shock as if he had been slashed by an invisible divine sword. With a scream, he fell to the ground. If it weren't for the golden barrier protecting him, he would have been killed by the sword intent. Even so, the Buddhist beads in Monk Zhu Jin's hand shattered, and he vomited a mouthful of blood. "Rector! Zhu Jin!" The group panicked. "Monks, listen up. Protect the temple." Master Abbot was panicking as well. Knowing that it was difficult to come up with a foolproof plan, he could only yell for an all-out attack. Right at this moment, a loud cracking sound came from above. The golden dome that was held up by the three guardian divine beasts was now cracking under the bombardment of the blazing fireball. The monks of Daluo Temple were devastated when they saw this. "We can't hold it any longer. Everyone, run!" The eminent monks were in despair. Although they were confident that they could survive the Vulcan mantra, most of the regular monks and beasts would surely die. Not only that, many of Daluo Temple's Buddhist halls, sutra library, and stupa forest, which had been passed down for thousands of years, would be destroyed in an instant. If the Vulcan mantra really came crashing down, the entire Daluo peak would be destroyed. From then on, Daluo Temple would cease to exist. Curator, please reconsider. My senior Ji-in is a righteous man and he's cautious in his actions. He wouldn't kill monsters indiscriminately. White Ape might not be dead, but there must be some other reason why they haven't returned. Just then, Jin Yen shouted from the top of the stairs. He was a wise man who had been quiet all this while. Now that he spoke, he used a mystical Buddhist voice and a mind-clearing incantation to stop this catastrophe on his own. If they really fought to the death, neither Curator nor Daluo Temple would win. At this, the group felt a refreshing breeze blow across their hearts, clearing their mind. Lin Jin obviously knew this, but he had no other choice due to the circumstances. Now that he heard Jin Yen's words, he knew that Daluo Temple might not be lying. Once the Vulcan mantra fell, the number of casualties would probably be more than 100. He immediately used a spell to retract the Vulcan edict. However, even if Lin Jin wanted to, he couldn't stop the Vulcan mantra completely. At this critical moment, a mystical voice came from the depths of Daluo Temple. "My friend, your spells are superb. However, Daluo Temple is my place of cultivation. It's better if you don't destroy it." Following the voice, hundreds of millions of fallen leaves rose with the wind, forming a gigantic Buddha's hand. The Buddha's hand formed a seal and blocked the descending fireball. The fire god edict that even the 3-rank 5 divine beast protectors couldn't block was actually forcefully withstood by the fallen leaf Buddha palm. The scene was so huge that it could blot out the sun. While Lin Jin was shocked, he quickly leaped up and invoked a spell. Retract. A half-burnt Vulcan talisman appeared in Lin Jin's hand. At the same time, Goldie flew out of the giant fireball. Boom! The fallen Buddha's hand was accompanied by the scorching sun's remnant flames, turning it into a curtain of heavenly fire. Forget Daluo Temple, everyone within a few hundred miles could clearly see the burning Buddha's hand in the sky. With the crisis averted, Lin Jin frowned under his mask as he looked into the depths of Daluo Temple. Forget Lin Jin, even the monks of Daluo Temple were dumbfounded. Most of them were at a loss for what to do. The earlier scene was too shocking. Even some of the eminent monks had never seen something like this in their lives. Then, the Buddhist voice appeared again. "Since you're here, you must be a guest. Kongju, invite your guest into the temple so we can talk." Following the voice, an old monk appeared out of thin air before Daluo Temple's entrance. He was dressed in plain clothes, and it was impossible to tell how old he was, but he was at least 100 years old. After that old monk appeared, Abbot shivered in fear. It was not only him. Even the demon-subduing Hall's Hall Master and the others revealed looks of shock. Grandmaster Xian Ju. Chapter 421. The younger monks were just shocked, but they didn't react. Instead, it was the abbot and the monks from the various halls who were shocked beyond words. The scrawny old monk lifted his bark-like eyelids, revealing a pair of murky eyes. "You guys, don't make a fool of yourselves in front of our esteemed guests." His words brought the abbot and the rectors back to their senses. They hurriedly bowed to the old monk. Even Lin Jin, who was watching from afar, was shocked. It was as if the abbot and the others hadn't seen this old monk for a long time. But soon, Lin Jin realized something. Earlier, the abbot addressed this old monk as Grandmaster Xianju. To be addressed as Grandmaster, one had to be at least 2 generations older. Daluo Temple's abbot was already close to 100 years old. How old would a Grandmaster have to be? Lin Jin was also sure that the expert who cast the Buddhist spell earlier, the one who chanted, was even more powerful than this Xianju. Who would have thought? Who knew that Daluo Temple was so full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers? But this seemed to be normal. If Daluo Temple didn't have a strong background, how could they have survived for 1,000 years? Based on the current situation, Lin Jin could basically confirm that Zhu Zhen and the abbot weren't lying to him. Jiyin hadn't returned and White Ape was also missing. Daluo Temple wasn't sure about this either, so there might be more to it than meets the eye. If that was the case, there was no point in keeping Daluo Temple around. They might even need to work together in the future. While Lin Jin was contemplating, the old monk Xianju, whom the abbot and all the rectors addressed as Grandmaster, had already taken a step forward. First, he went to Zhu Zhen's side and gave him a pat. Zhu Zhen immediately felt as if he was bathed in a spring breeze. His meridians, which had been damaged by Lin Jin's sword intent, were now recovering rapidly. Then, Xianju appeared before Lin Jin in an instant. Putting his palms together, he chanted, "My friend, your swordsmanship is peerless. I'm impressed. Please follow me into the temple and have a chat with the revered one." Lin Jin didn't move. He was still considering whether he should go in or not. Without a doubt, if Lin Jin went all out and used all his skills, it wouldn't be a problem to force the abbot, Zhu Zhen, and the other monks into submission. Moreover, this wasn't a head-on battle. Instead, Lin Jin was using the destruction of the temple to force them into submission. If they were to fight face-to-face, Lin Jin didn't think he could defeat the 4 rank 5 guardian beasts. On the path of beasts, Daluo Temple's abbot's 4 guardian beasts were considered to have reached the pinnacle. Even Lin Jin wasn't at their level yet. In other words, Lin Jin was risking his life by coming here. If he wasn't careful, he might lose his life. It was obvious that there were Buddhist experts in Daluo Temple who were more powerful than the abbot. Judging from the abbot and Zhu Zhen's reactions, they did not even know about it. This was a little scary. If he were to go in, he might not be able to come out safely. After all, he had almost destroyed the Daluo Temple. Just then, the little fox in his arms stirred. Lin Jin looked down to see that Shang'er had woken up and was staring at him with wide eyes. Other than that, the little fox's tail twitched. Lin Jin noticed that 3 more tails had grown out from the original 3. It seemed like the little fox now had 6 tails. The 6 tails must have been a result of Shang'er's internal organs being tempered by divine lightning. The museum's explanation for this secret technique was that it was an evolution method. Lin Jin caressed the little fox's head. Shang'er's status had been refreshed in the museum. After taking a closer look, Lin Jin smiled. All right, since they had invited him, he had to go. He would just play it by ear when the time came. After all, he now had 2 rank 5 beasts on his side. One was Goldie and the other was Shang'er. Just now, Shang'er had awoken from her slumber and silently entered the rank 5 realm. With this, Lin Jin would at least have some tricks up his sleeves if he encountered any trouble. Especially with Shang'er's evolution, she was now a rank 5 monster. Together, she and Goldie were practically invincible within the same realm. Master, you're too kind. Please lead the way. Lin Jin's mind raced. After thinking it through, he nodded at Master Xianju. Please. Xianju stepped forward with Lin Jin following closely behind. The abbot and the other monks exchanged glances before following them in. Zhu Zhen, who was killed by Lin Jin's Heaven's Path sword intent and then saved by Master Xianju, could barely stand up. His old injuries had yet to heal and now he had a new one. If it weren't for Master Xianju, he would have been severely injured even if he didn't die. Daluo Temple was a little chaotic. Due to the Vulcan edict, the monks seemed to be in a hurry. However, with the help of the temple's hidden experts, there weren't many problems. Even if some places caught on fire due to the dry weather, the monks would still be able to put them out. Daluo Temple was huge. There were 5 main halls and hundreds of side halls. Including the monks' houses and meditation rooms, the temple looked like a city in the mountains. Xianju seemed to be taking one step at a time. But soon, he realized that with each step he took, he would move 10 feet forward. Although he was still walking at the same pace, his speed was no longer the same as before. Lin Jin was the first to notice this change. Not only did Xianju increase his speed, but his figure had also become blurry. Fortunately, Lin Jin had some tricks up his sleeve. Clouds formed beneath his feet and he quickly kept up with Xianju. However, the monks behind him couldn't keep up. Other than a handful of high monks who could keep up with Xianju, the others couldn't even react in time. That's fast. Unwilling to give up, one of the monks leaped up to the top of the wall and looked around. To his surprise, he still couldn't find Xianju. That's weird. Silence. That's Grandmaster Xianju. Even Master Abbot has to address him as Grandmaster. Watch your mouth. Senior, Daluo Temple's monikers have been passed down since 2 years ago. They are ranked according to Shi, Su, Kong, Xian, Wu, Fa, Ju, and Ji. This means that this Grandmaster Xianju is 2 ranks higher than our abbot and all the rectors. But why haven't we heard of him before? Our Daluo Temple is a Buddhist sect with a 1,000-year-old heritage. Who knows how many great monks we have produced in the past? It's not impossible for there to be a senior monk with the Xian name to cultivate in seclusion. Perhaps even the abbot doesn't know about this. Then, the Buddhist chants from before, don't say any more. That Buddhist chants were profound and contained great wisdom. I'm afraid a real Buddha has appeared. Buddha! The monks were shocked. Buddha was the pinnacle of Buddhism. He was a Buddhist existence of the highest rank. Just like the ancient immortals, he should have been long gone. One could only imagine how the monks of Daluo Temple were feeling right now. Although they had just gone through an ordeal that almost wiped out the temple, the fragrance of plum blossoms came from the bitter cold. They were about to receive good news. Chapter 422. Daluo Temple still had a living Buddha. This was definitely a piece of news that could shock the world. The Buddha was an immortal, and there were many miraculous things in the ancient legends. In the past, they were just stories, but now they had appeared in real life. The excitement and agitation in the hearts of the monks was simply hard to suppress. Even some of the old monks had looks of excitement on their faces. Everything that happened today had given them great motivation. From the battle between the abbot and the curator to the Buddha's intervention to neutralizing the blazing fireball, everything had greatly broadened their horizons. Even if they disregarded the Buddha, the abbot and the curator were considered remarkable in the eyes of the common folk. Of course, there were also the smarter ones who understood that the curator was no ordinary person. How could a monk with the Xian name invite a mortal? What did the Buddha say? He addressed the curator as fellow Taoist. Perhaps not even Lin Jin could have imagined that the name curator would be known throughout the world from this day onward. But that wasn't what Lin Jin was thinking about. Using the cloud treading technique, he followed behind Xianju. They passed through the clouds and arrived at a lake in Daluo Temple. The lake was not big and looked like a large pond. By then, Xianju had already stepped into the water and disappeared. Lin Jin followed suit and took a step into the water as well. With his water reservoir armor, he was impervious to water. Forget a small lake like this, he could even cross rivers and oceans. However, the abbot and the others who followed him here didn't go down. Although the abbot and the others had high cultivation levels and were protected by guardian beasts, They didn't know how to control water, so they couldn't enter the river. Senior Abbot, Grand Master Xian Ju has brought the curator into the lake. What should we do? Wisdom Hall's rector asked. The abbot shook his head. Seems like this lake is where the Grand Master and Buddha cultivate. We can't enter without permission. Let's just wait here. After entering the lake, Lin Jin realized that while the lake didn't seem huge, it was actually extremely deep. The center of the lake was like a dark abyss. Xian Ju walked in the water, while Lin Jin followed closely behind with his water reservoir armor. Xian Ju turned around and looked surprised. Then, he nodded. Fellow Taoist, this way please. Further down, Lin Jin saw a stream of light. Looking down, he saw a strange fish. The strange fish was huge, with the body of a fish and the head of a dragon. As it swam, its golden scales shone brightly, and its aura was so powerful that even without an appraisal, it was obvious that it was a grade 5 exotic beast. Lin Jin mused, this Daluo temple sure is resourceful. If there's nothing else, I definitely won't come again. And to be honest, I was a little reckless this time. As the golden-scaled arowana swam over, Lin Jin took the opportunity to touch it and record it into the museum. With just a quick glance, he knew that his previous appraisal was pretty much the same as reality. This arowana was indeed a fifth-order beast. Further down, Lin Jin saw a huge bubble with a tiny house inside. Once inside the bubble, Lin Jin felt like he was in another world. There seemed to be some kind of magical power here that isolated the lake water. Once his feet touched the ground, Lin Jin looked up and felt like he was visiting an aquarium in his past life. It was a spacious area with green grass. Other than the house, there was only a tree beside it. The branches were slender and the leaves were emerald green. There were even banyan fruits hanging from the tree. It was an indescribable sense of harmony. Under the tree was a gigantic tortoise the size of a millstone. Sitting on top of it was a monk. The monk was dressed in a bina robe, and he was motionless like a statue. His skin and flesh seemed to be rotting. Lin Jin was surprised by how old a person could be when he first saw Xian Ju. But after seeing this monk, Lin Jin realized that Xian Ju was actually quite young. His age was indescribable. Just one look at him and Lin Jin could feel the weight of these two words. Time. It was the word time. Apart from that, the old monk was shrouded in a thick aura of death. Lin Jin knew that this must be the revered one that Xian Ju mentioned. He was also the one who used his supernatural powers to gather millions of fallen leaves to block the Vulcan Edict. Lin Jin knew what he was capable of. That Vulcan Edict was a spell that he barely managed to cast by combining the Edict Amulet, the Golden Crow's bloodline, and his Dragonfire. In fact, if it was a one-on-one fight, Master Abbot could have killed him. He only managed to do so because he had the upper hand and pressured Lin Jin with his aura. Lin Jin could still vividly remember the Abbot's 4 guardian beasts. Hence, Lin Jin had been cautious from the start. While he seemed nonchalant, he was actually on guard. Xian Ju went over to the old monk and bowed. My friend, I know why you're here. Daluo Temple has been overly judgmental toward monsters in recent years. They've been asking too little about right and wrong, and there are signs that they've strayed onto the wrong path. Xian Ju, go and warn them. Have them reflect on their mistakes and turn over a new leaf. His words left Lin Jin with a good impression. Lin Jin mused. A true monk of Daluo Temple sure is something else. May I know who your teacher is? The old monk asked. Lin Jin didn't know how to answer this question. Speaking of which, he didn't have a teacher. His cultivation depended entirely on the Museum of Deadly Beasts. He only learned some edicts from Cloud Sect and the unending nature landscape by chance. After giving it some thought, Lin Jin answered half-truthfully, I don't have a teacher. I just happened to meet a Taoist from Cloud Sect and learned some edicts from him. Cloud Sect? Oh, I remember now. Although it's small, it's still considered a branch of Taoism. So Cloud sect still has descendant. Not bad, not bad. The old monk's voice carried a sense of vicissitudes, as if he had been through the baptism of countless years. There was a sense of peace in his voice. I've seen your sword intent soaring through the sky with my Dharma eyes. It looks familiar, the old monk probed. The old monk probed. Lin Jin gave it some thought before answering, Master, I learned this sword intent from a senior named Dooley. At the mention of Dooley, the old monk was stunned. His eyes, that had been like a pool of stagnant water, suddenly lit up. Dooley? He's still alive? Lin Jin's heart skipped a beat. It felt like the old monk knew him. In fact, back in the unending nature landscape, Dooley was only left with an obsession. Strictly speaking, this ancient immortal had long since passed away. If this old monk knew Dooley, then they were probably from the same era. How could he have survived until now? Didn't they say that an immortal had fallen? How did this person manage to avoid it? If that was the case, then this person was a level 1 immortal. In Buddhist terms, he was a Buddha. At the thought of a living Buddha, even though Lin Jin was mentally prepared, he still shuddered. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that if the old monk wanted to kill him, Lin Jin wouldn't be able to fight back. Fellow Taoist, where did you meet Dooley? The Buddha asked with a hint of anxiousness in his eyes. At the same time, the weather in this secret realm at the bottom of the lake suddenly changed. Not only did the lake water boil, but a strong gust of wind was also blowing. Chapter 423. The sudden change in weather made Lin Jin's heart pound. Judging by the situation, this Buddha and Dooley probably didn't just know each other. There might even be a grudge between them. At some point, Buddha had raised his head and was staring straight at Lin Jin. Just by looking at him, Lin Jin felt as if Mount Tai was bearing down on him and a flood was pouring out of the 5 lakes. An invisible aura swept over him. Lin Jin knew he couldn't withstand this aura. There would only be one outcome if he tried to resist it, and that was death. To protect himself, Lin Jin opened the visitation hall's door without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, the door behind Lin Jin opened wide and a surge of energy surged out to stop Buddha's aura. When Buddha saw the door behind Lin Jin, he was stunned. His aura dissipated in an instant and an indescribable look appeared in his eyes. But soon, his expression returned to that of stagnant water. The abnormalities in the surroundings also disappeared without a trace. Everything calmed down as if nothing had happened. The door behind Lin Jin was still open and the shock on Xianju's face had yet to fade. Of course, Lin Jin was also shocked. But he was wearing a mask. This was the benefit of wearing a mask. Even if you were wearing a look of disbelief and shock, to outsiders, you would still look as calm as an old dog. Xianju, please step back. I have something to say to this friend here. The Buddha no longer asked about Dooley. Instead, he spoke to monk Xianju with a slightly weak voice. The latter was obviously very respectful toward Buddha and would carry out any order he gave without hesitation. Xianju performed a Buddhist salute and flew out of the bottom of the lake. Now, only Lin Jin and the Buddha were left. Lin Jin had no idea what the other party was going to say, so he could only keep the door open behind him in case the other party suddenly attacked. Don't panic, my friend. I've known Dooley for a long time. That's why I lost my composure when I heard about him. Having said that, Buddha put his palms together and bowed to Lin Jin. Lin Jin could tell that this was a strenuous task for Buddha. My friend, when did you meet Dooley? Can you tell me? Buddha asked. Lin Jin had nothing to hide, so he said it was not long ago, no more than a month ago. The Buddha was visibly shaken. Fellow Taoist, please tell me the details. It could be seen that the Buddha attached great importance to this matter. After some thought, Lin Jin explained the gist of the situation. Of course, Lin Jin didn't mention the unending nature landscape because it was necessary to be vigilant. After all, it was a priceless treasure and there was no guarantee that the other party wouldn't covet it. Even if this Buddha had a profound cultivation and didn't care for a treasure of that level, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't prepare it for Daluo Temple's disciples. Hence, it was always better to be cautious. Upon hearing Lin Jin's explanation, Buddha's expression changed slightly before realization dawned on him. Because Lin Jin's explanation was just as he had expected. The Buddha sighed and said, "Du should be dead. 1,000 years ago, he was already at the end of his rope. What you saw was only a remnant of his soul stored in a magic treasure. However, Du Li's sect has many powerful inheritances. If you can obtain one or two of them, you will benefit greatly." Lin Jin thought about it for a moment and pretended not to understand what he meant. At this moment, the Buddha actually laughed. "Fellow Taoist, you might be wondering who I am and why I know Du Li." Lin Jin quickly nodded. He had been curious about this for a long time but didn't know how to ask. Now that the Buddha had taken the initiative to tell him, Lin Jin was more than happy to hear it. There are some things that even Xian Ju doesn't know. Buddhist cultivation is all about fate. Fellow Taoist, we are fated, and now that we are entangled together, we can't be separated. Let me tell you about it. The Buddha then told him a story. 3,700 years ago, it was the peak of immortal cultivation. Daluo Temple already existed back then, but compared to other Buddhist sacred grounds, Daluo Temple was just an insignificant temple. The temple didn't produce any Buddhas, and there were less than 10 monks. Most of them spent their days ringing the bell, so how could they possibly be in the mood to pay respects to Buddha and cultivate? On the other hand, if a criminal committed a crime, they might come to this temple to seek refuge. They would shave their tongues and hide for a few years, waiting for the incident to blow over before going out to enjoy themselves. Back then, Daluo Temple wasn't a place for Buddhist cultivation. It was simply a place of filth. One day, a butcher who had committed murder hid in the temple overnight. Relying on his viciousness, he forced the monks to shave his tongues. From then on, he lived in Daluo Temple as a monk. Half a year later, thinking that the incident had blown over, the butcher sneaked down the mountain to look for his family. It was only then that he found out that his family had been murdered by his enemies. Filled with grief and indignation, the butcher found out where his enemies were and wanted to seek revenge. Only then did he realize that he was too weak. It was impossible for him to take revenge with his own abilities. During his half a year at Daluo Temple, the butcher read quite a few Buddhist scriptures. One of them mentioned the Wisdom King, which was the embodiment of Buddha's anger. After a night of contemplation, the butcher decided to return to Daluo Temple to cultivate Buddhism. At the very least, he had to cultivate the Wisdom King, so that his revenge would be easier. However, it was not that easy to cultivate. This butcher had painstakingly cultivated for several months, but was unable to attain the Dharma gate. As such, there was no hope for revenge. Of course, he was in agony and despair. So one night, he could not take it anymore and decided to hang himself. However, at the critical moment, he was stopped by the abbot of the temple. Out of 10 monks in the temple, 9 of them were scoundrels. Only one of them was a good person, and that was the abbot himself. The abbot was merciful. He saved the butcher and taught him Buddhism. The butcher was too eager for revenge to listen to him. He threatened to kill himself and begged the abbot to enlighten him on the path of cultivation. The abbot did not refuse and taught him everything he knew. 10 years later, the fake monks who came to hide from the limelight had already left one after another. Only the butcher persisted. Furthermore, he had made some achievements in his studies and went down the mountain to seek revenge. However, due to the tempering of the Dharma, even though he still wanted to seek revenge, the desire was no longer as strong as before. After he went down the mountain, he searched everywhere and found out that his enemies had already died in the martial world. After experiencing this, The butcher pondered for a long time before realizing something. The abbot knew that he would go down the mountain to seek revenge, but he didn't stop him. In fact, he knew that his enemies were dead. Moreover, the butcher knew that his enemies were so powerful that even if he cultivated for 10 years, he would still be no match for them. By asking him to go down the mountain, the abbot was actually asking him to let go of his grudge and become a Buddha. Later on, he did cultivate to the realm of Buddha and strengthened Daluo Temple. He even befriended immortals. At this point, the Buddha seemed to be reminiscing. Lin Jin could tell that he was talking about himself. If that was the case, it would be too much of an exaggeration. 3,700 years ago. Didn't that mean that this Buddha was at least 3,700 years old? If that was true, the old jade dragon's lifespan would be exhausted after 300 to 500 years. That was ridiculous. The Buddha continued. The abbot was an expert. When he passed away, he said that there would be an earth-shattering calamity 1,000 years later. He even told me of a way to avoid it. It's because of this that I'm still alive today. But this is the end of it. At this point, the Buddha on the turtle's back seemed to have sensed something. He looked up and his expression turned solemn as he spoke faster. My friend, Dooley and I are good friends. I acted on impulse earlier because I thought he was still alive. If he was, perhaps the two of us could fight him to the death. But in the end, I was thinking too much. My friend, I can see that you've reached the threshold of immortality, but I still advise you to give up and stop cultivating. Just as he said that, a terrifying pressure suddenly came from above his head. Lin Jin looked up in shock. Above Daluo Temple, a door appeared out of thin air and from it, a beast's claw reached out. The speed of the beast's claws was so fast that nobody could react in time. Many of the monks in the temple were still cleaning up. At this moment they were extremely shocked. In the next moment, the beast's claws reached into the pond in the temple. With a loud boom, the pond was destroyed. The surrounding halls and halls were destroyed as well. Even the people at the foot of Daluo Peak could clearly see that the gigantic beast's claw was too terrifying. Under its aura, all beasts within 100 miles fell silent. The beast's claw left as quickly as it came. Grabbing a clump of rubble and mud, it retracted back into the door in the sky. Then, the door disappeared as if it had never been there. Daluo Temple was in a mess. The abbot and the other monks rushed over at top speed only to see that the pond in the inner lake had been completely destroyed. The inner lake was nowhere to be seen. All they could see was a deep pit. It was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. Someone had already flown down. It was Monk Xianju. The bottom of the pit was filled with muddy water. 300 feet above the broken wall, muddy water kept pouring down and rubble rained down. It was as if doomsday had arrived. Below, a person was standing. The muddy water couldn't get within 10 feet of this person. Even if a rock fell, it would be deflected by a force. A six-tailed fox stood on this person's shoulder, its 6 tails swaying. When it saw Xianju descending, it looked wary. This person was none other than Lin Jin. Xianju landed and hovered in the air, looking around anxiously. My friend, where is His Excellency? From his voice, it was obvious that Xianju was panicking. Lin Jin came to his senses and looked up at the sky. His finger that was holding the needle was trembling. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.